Chapter 46. Zhang Yunshan's challenge without following any special method, and just relying on natural instincts. He had finally opened the world bridge. Countless Lingqi entered his body, and his Houtian Zhen Qi started to condense faster compared to earlier, when the world bridge was not open. Yi Shiwen started to condense Houtian Zhen Qi into Xiantian Zhen Qi. But how this refining process could be so simple? After all, Yi Shiwen was not in the Xiantian realm right now. He was only a Houtian realm expert, so refining Xiantian Zhen Qi was undoubtedly much more difficult for him. However, even if it was very difficult, Yi Shiwen did not give up. Countless spirit stones started burning, and the Lingqi produced started to infuse with his body. He entered the special space and started to constantly direct the Zhen Qi towards building up the Sea of Qi. The Zhen Qi, which was spread throughout his body, needed to be concentrated at the center of the Sea of Qi, and then only it could be condensed into Xiantian Zhen Qi. However, now that he had started to concentrate the Zhen Qi at the center of the Sea of Qi, it felt as if his Sea of Qi would explode any time. He had to go all out to compress his Zhen Qi inside the Sea of Qi. However, it was very painful. Strand by strand, his Zhen Qi began to condense more and more inside the Sea of Qi. Yi Ziwen's complexion suddenly paled with pain, which was clearly visible on his face, and his body was also covered in cold sweat. This was an extremely painful process. Yi Shiwen was a patient person with a strong willpower, and that's why he could constantly endure the tremendous pain. Otherwise, his whole spirit would have collapsed by now. Yi Shiwen did not give up, because he had already prepared himself, knowing full well that this would be a difficult procedure, very difficult. In simple words, many people would have given up in the beginning itself. Yi Shiwen did not know for how long he continued to add his Zhen Qi to the Sea of Qi, and condensed it unceasingly. He continued this insane procedure non-stop for a long time. After constantly condensing the Zhen in the Sea of Qi, finally, his Zhen Qi started to mutate, and a trace of majestic Zhen Qi appeared in his Dantian. It was entirely different from Houtian Zhen Qi, and contained terrifying power. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes, and smiled with a look of satisfaction on his face. Finally, he had successfully condensed the very first strands of Xiantian Zhen Qi. This was the hardest first step, which he had successfully completed. Now, he just needed to continue amassing Xiantian Zhen Qi by condensing his Houtian Zhen Qi one step at a time. He looked outside the window and noticed that it was already dawn. Yi Shiwen dined with his family, and when he was returning back to his small courtyard to start his cultivation, suddenly, he heard a loud noise coming from outside. Yi Shiwen, come out. I, Zhang Yuntian, have come to challenge you. A loud voice thundered from the outside. Yi Shiwen instantly knew that trouble had finally found him. Zhang family would not let him off so easily. After all, he had defeated their champion in just one move, and this had caused them to lose face. So their only option was to eradicate the root cause. Yi Shiwen went out, and was very surprised to find Zhang Yunfei outside his courtyard. He was perniciously looking at him, although his face was somewhat pale because of yesterday's injuries that had not healed completely. Right in front of Zhang Yunfei stood a young man. He seemed to be in his 20s, had large muscular body, and looked quite handsome. He was the elder brother of Zhang Yunfei, named Zhang Yuntian. However, from behind, a lot of Yi Yuan school disciples had also come. When they had come to know that Zhang Yuntian, a famous expert from Zhang family, had actually come to challenge Yi Shiwen, the famous champion of their Yi Yuan school, then it had suddenly aroused the curiosity of many disciples, and they had immediately rushed towards Yi Ziwen's small courtyard. Yi Shiwen came out of his courtyard with a hint of ridicule on his face and said, "What's wrong? Looking for your father?" Ha ha ha. Suddenly the crowd of the Yi Yuan school disciples gave out a loud laughter. The news about the yesterday's fight had already spread like a forest fire inside the Yi Yuan school. So, they certainly knew what Yi Shiwen actually meant. However, Zhang Yunfei's face had flushed with anger, and his Zhen Qi had started to leak out from his body. He looked more perniciously at Yi Shiwen, as if trying to rip him apart using just his sight. "Less rubbish, today I will teach you a lesson," Zhang Yuntian said impatiently. "I will break your legs and let you know what fierceness actually is." Then suddenly, Zhang Yuntian moved and his figure leaped. His sword struck, and a fierce jinqi exploded in the air with huge explosive power. The strength of late Hotian ninth stage completely broke out. Everyone around was stunned because his sword was extremely fast. As fast as a meteor, in simple words, it had already approached the acme. Being ranked among the top 5 Zhang core disciples was not just for show. With this move, almost in a moment, Zhang Yuntian had immediately arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. Almost in a flash, no one could see it clearly, but Yi Shiwen had drawn out a long blade from the sheath on his back, and a bright blade light flashed brilliantly and obscured the sky. This gorgeous blade light formed a curtain made up of many blades in the midair. The curtain of blades, in an instant, arrived in front of Zhang Yuntian. Dang! A loud metal clanging sound spread, and Zhang Yuntian immediately sensed that a threatening mass of strength was being transmitted from his sword. He could not withstand the power present in Yi Zaiwen's blade curtain attack, and immediately, he had been pushed back by 8 steps before stopping. Yi Zaiwen's strength of 99 tigers was definitely not a joke. Ha 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 ha! Seeing that Yi Shiwen had easily blocked Zhang Yunshin's attack with just one swing of his blade, Yiyuan school disciples suddenly laughed out even more loudly than before. At this time, Zhang Yunshin's face also revealed a troubled expression. Zhang Yuntian gave out a loud roar, and it seemed that he was preparing to attack again. The tip of his sword danced and many Jianhua appeared in the sky, and went towards Yi Shiwen to strike together at once. Yi Shiwen sneered and his long blade chopped out. With the speed of lightning, his long blade chopped down while cutting through the air, and directly destroyed all those Jianhua. Boom! A loud explosion occurred accompanied by a burst of metal clashing sound. Layer after layer of terrible zhenqi had instantly blasted off in the surrounding area. Yi Zaiwen's long blade was fast like a meteor, which instantly arrived in front of Zhang Yuntian, and chopped out. Zhang Yuntian was suddenly taken aback. He lifted his sword to resist, however. Yi Zaiwen's long blade had already fiercely crashed into his sword and cracks had started to appear on its surface. Yi Zaiwen's sharp bladiki was also stinging on his cheeks. Yi Shiwen did not stop here, and again chopped down his long blade. The current strength present in his blade had almost increased by more than half of what it used to be. 2 blades. 3 blades. 4 blades. As Yi Zaiwen's strength had increased several times, when his 4th blade chopped down, the total power present in the attack had also increased several times. Bang! Zhang Yunshin's long double-edged sword snapped, and Yi Zaiwen's long blade had already come in front of him in a flash. However, Yi Shiwen used the flat surface of his blade and advanced towards Zhang Yuntian to slap on his face. Bang! The flat surface of Yi Zaiwen's blade maliciously slapped on the face of Zhang Yuntian, and his body immediately flew off. His teeth had been smashed, and he immediately spit out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 47. Repercussions. Famous Zhang Yuntian had been sent flying by Yi Zaiwen's blade. This result was simply very shocking, and especially for those Zhang Junior disciples who had also come to see this fight. They simply couldn't accept that Zhang Yuntian, who was like a deity in their eyes, had been unable to block even a single blade attack from Yi Shiwen. Brother! Zhang Yunfei was the first to react, and ran up to his brother, who was lying on the ground. Yi Shiwen looked coldly at Zhang Yunfei and said, "He is not dead, so quickly take him away from here. Our Yiyuan school is not a place where you Zhang people can just walk in and boast about yourself. The next time you try to be provocative, it won't be settled this easily. Go back. Hurry up and get out of here. Do you want to die, Zhang bastards? Get lost. Otherwise, we can be very rude." Yiyuan school's disciples were booing non-stop. Yiyuan school and Zhang family had not been hostile towards each other for a period of mere 1 or 2 years. It was a long-lived enmity, and disciples of both the schools were used to hating each other. However, both parties had similar strengths, and therefore the end result was always a draw. This rivalry had continued for a long time, and would continue in the future as well. However, Zhang Yunfei and his elder brother, Zhang Yuntian, had dared to provoke Yiyuan school, and both of them had suffered a bitter defeat at the hands of Yi Shiwen, who was this year's champion of Yiyuan school. So this would obviously cause the Zhang family to lose face. Everyone could see that if it was not for Yi Shiwen being merciful, Zhang Yuntian would have been torn to shreds by now. The news about the fight between Yi Shiwen and Zhang Yuntian, and the subsequent defeat of Zhang Yuntian, had soon spread throughout the Yiyuan school. Initially, many people did not trust the news, because Yi Shiwen was only an inner sect disciple who had won this year's championship. Although he had shown outstanding strength and had run amok in the competition, but he was still a rookie core disciple. There was a possibility that he might have defeated Zhang Yunfei, because he was also the champion of this year's competition at Zhang family, and could be set on the same level as Yi Shiwen. But who was Zhang Yuntian? Even among the Zhang core disciples, he was considered among the top 5. So how could Yi Shiwen defeat such a powerful genius? This was a mystery for anyone who had not seen this fight with their own eyes. But this fight had many witnesses, and they quickly spread the news. And when this news had been confirmed by many credible sources, everyone had to admit that Yi Shiwen had truly and flawlessly defeated Zhang Yuntian. Yi Shiwen had finally gained a true fame in Yiyuan school. Although he had won the competition then became a champion, but after getting promoted to the ranks of core disciples, his reputation as a champion didn't hold much importance in the core sect. For inner sect and outer sect disciples, a champion's existence was truly glorious. However, in the core sect, being a champion was not a big deal. After all, the core sect consisted of the crowd from previous year's geniuses, which also included a lot of previous champions. However, Yi Ziwen's flawless victory over Zhang Yuntian actually caused his reputation to rise exponentially. Now his reputation inside the Yiyuan school was on par with that of the famous geniuses from core sect. In the depths of Yiyuan school, Ancestors' Palace Hall was located. There, Yi Kongming was sitting on the ground and was somewhat frowning. In the seat above, there was a middle-aged man clad in purple robe, who seemed like an ordinary middle-aged man. However, all the people from Yiyuan school would know that this middle-aged man was actually the Yiyuan school's ancestor called Lin Zhantian. Hiding in the shadows, he held the ultimate power of Yiyuan school's ancestor. Yi Kongming, I did not expect that Yi Shiwen will become so outstanding. The last time I saw him 2 years ago, he was just an average disciple, but who would have thought that in such a short interval of time, he would change so much? Lin Zhantian said with a sigh. His current strength is sufficient enough to put him among the top 10 core disciples. This is not surprising. After all, he is that person's child. Yi Kongming said with an indifferent look on his face, as if it was something he had always expected. When Yi Kongming mentioned that person, Lin Zhantian didn't say anything. He paused for a bit then continued. I finally broke through and soon, I will head back to main sect, but here at Qingfeng Mountainside, I recommend you to become the next ancestor. You already know that I'm not interested, Yi Kongming said. I know that you are not interested, however. This is the place where we all grew up, and I won't be at ease if I were to hand it over to someone else. Lin Zhantian said. Can I refuse? Yi Kongming said in an indifferent manner. You can't, Lin Zhantian said. Like this, the two men continued to talk. Ah, you brat. I had not expected that you would even defeat that Zhang Yuntian. Ha. Now he won't be able to show his face in public. Yi Rushua laughed and said. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen said I'm back. The door opened and Yi Feng entered while laughing heartily. Little brother, I heard about your fight with Zhang Yuntian. Ha. You actually beat the shit out of him, and he couldn't even retaliate. A tall and sturdy-looking Yi Feng strode in. He was full of vigor, and was clad in extravagant clothes. Just now, he had returned from the backside of Qingfeng Mountain where he was cultivating. This really helped me in venting my anger. Yi Feng laughed. What's wrong? Do you have some old grudge with Zhang Yuntian? Yi Shiwen asked. Yi Feng smiled coldly and said, Yes, we had fought in the Qingfeng Mountain Forest once. At that time, I had just been promoted to the ranks of core disciples. When I found a very precious medicinal herb, that bastard sneak attacked me, and I almost died under his hidden weapon attack. Then his terrible Zhen Qi started to leak out involuntarily. Right now he was already at the peak of Hotian 9th stage, and was only one step away from breaking through to the Xiantian realm. Yifeng had stayed at the peak of Hotian 8th stage for several years, but for the sake of core disciples competition this time, and then to enter the main sect, the accumulated cultivation of all those years released at once. This is why he was able to reach the peak of Hotian 9th stage in such a short amount of time. This kind of practice was to consolidate the cultivation state and to lay a very deep foundation in order to prepare for breaking through to the Xiantian realm. Thanks to this special cultivation style, Yifeng had become much stronger than the other masters of peak Hotian 9th stage. I was planning to teach that bastard a lesson in the upcoming core disciples competition. But little brother, you have already avenged me, and it really saves me a lot of trouble. Yifeng did not need to pay attention to Zhang Yuntian, because now, his strength was far above Zhang Yuntian. Gee, big brother, you haven't seen how third brother taught him a good lesson. Yi Rushua said while smiling. Speaking of little brother, you ought to practice and quickly catch up with the younger, and quickly reach the Hotian 9th stage, because then only you will be able to enter the head school. Yifeng said and scowled. I know. Yi Rushua was a happy-go-lucky type person, and she knew how to handle her strict brother. However, her mind was never fully focused on practicing. Correction. In chapter 41, while translating, I got confused and mistranslated the above-mentioned term. However, thanks to Shipwreck, I finally sorted out that confusion. The correction is, Hua Menghan was a disciple of Yi Yuan School's main sect. Chapter 48 Core Disciples Competition begins. Yi Yuan School, main sect allowed entry to the Masters of Hotian 7th stage, or above. However, in accordance with the standards of Yi Yuan School, only Hotian 9th stage disciples could enter the outer sect, and only Xiantian level disciples could enter the inner sect. As for the disciples with the cultivation below Hotian 9th stage, they were treated as part-time disciples. They were basically like the slave disciples, and their status was very low in the Yi Yuan School. Although the position of outer sect disciples was also relatively low within the Yi Yuan School. However, they just needed to do a series of chores, and for that, they could receive some resources for cultivation. They would also get an opportunity to attend lectures about cultivation and techniques. In Qingfeng Mountains Yi Yuan School, most disciples would choose to work under the Yi Yuan School after they had broken through the Hotian 9th stage. Well, no one was stupid enough to leave their own domain where they had lived and cultivated for all this time. Come with me. I'll introduce you to the several fellow top disciples. Yifeng said. Yifeng wanted Yi Shiwen to make contacts with the top players among the core disciples, because at his current strength and fame, Yi Shiwen could be ranked among the top core disciples. This term's core disciples only had 3 top disciples, who were widely renowned in the Yi Yuan School. They were Zhang Yang, Qian Wanru and Wu Hao. The strongest among them was Zhang Yang, with his strength similar to Yifeng, who was also a master of peak Hotian 9th stage. He was a tall and steady-looking young man. Qian Wanru was a beautiful woman with a colorful flower-like appearance, although her cultivation was only at the late Hotian 9th stage. Wu Hao was a tall, slim young man. His cultivation was the same as Qian Wanru, the late Hotian 9th stage. Including Yifeng, there were only 4 top core disciples in Yi Yuan School. Other core disciples were not strong enough to be considered among the top. However, the Zhang family already had 5 famous disciples, and in addition to that, this year, 2 more disciples had also reached the late Hotian 9th stage, and had entered into the ranks of top disciples. For the core disciples competition, Zhang family had an overwhelming numerical advantage. And thanks to this, Zhang family was planning to snatch all of the Blood Yuan fruits for themselves by overwhelming the Yi Yuan School. However, Yi Yuan School, including Yi Shiwen, had only 5, which was far from enough. The good thing about being a top core disciple was that one could enjoy many resources provided by the school. Now, Yi Shiwen had also joined this small group of geniuses, and all of them carried the hopes of Yi Yuan School. Yi Yuan School was planning to rely on this small group to beat the Zhang family geniuses in the upcoming competition at the Blood Yuan territory. Day after day, time passed by. In this duration, Yi Shiwen also got used to his new status of one of the top core disciples, and finally, the day of the beginning of core disciples competition had arrived. On this day, the core disciples had been called to the top of the square. This was a broad plaza, and in comparison to its huge size, a group of mere 100 core disciples looked too small and insignificant. Yi Shiwen and others did not have to wait for too long, and soon, two elders appeared in front of them. One of these elders was fat, and the other was thin. When the core disciples saw the two of them, they immediately knew who they were. Yi Shiwen also knew that they were the well-known fat and thin elders of Yi Yuan School. Because the fat and thin attributes of these two elders were too obvious. And in addition to that, these two had always accompanied each other from the time they had become the elders of this school. In fact, over time, many people had even forgotten their real names, and would directly call them fat and thin elders. This time's squad for the core disciples competition is again a lineup of losers. The fat elder said in a straightforward manner, "I won't talk about the rest of the crap. Let's come to the point." The fat elder's face looked serious, and he said in a cold voice, "The place where the competition is going to take place is called Blood Yuan Territory. I think you already know where it is located. Countless people from our Yi Yuan school have died there. I just hope that many of you will come back alive. So I ask again, whoever wants to quit, quit now." After hearing the words of Fat Elder, more than 40 core disciples opted out. However, no one made fun of them. After all, this was going to be a trip to the hell inside the Blood Yuan Territory. Although the benefits were many, and if one could survive there, then he would definitely reap a lot of benefits. But the reality was much crueler than they had expected, because many experts had died inside the Blood Yuan Territory earlier, including some Xiantian masters as well. The core disciples who opted out were mostly the masters of Hotian 8th stage, and their strength was obviously poor compared to other masters of Hotian 9th stage. They could never expect to get good grades, and there was also a chance of getting killed. So their only option was to give up now when they still had a chance. In this session, the newly promoted core disciples were only Yi Shiwen and Dongfang Bai. Yi Shiwen noticed that Dongfang Bai seemed to be looking forward to this competition, and was also full of energy. From the looks of it, it was obvious that the injury he had received from Zhang Yunfei's hidden poison needle had already healed. Each of you participants will receive a Yaopai, which will record points for you through the competition. Killing a demon beast of 8th stage will reward 10 points. A 9th stage demon beast will reward 50 points. And a Xiantian level demon beast will reward 1,000 points. Also, we have also kept 15 tokens in the Blood Yuan Territory, which can be of 3 different colors: red, yellow and green, each corresponding to a score of 100, 500 and 1,000. At this time, the Thin Elder further explained, "Also, whatever treasures you find there will be converted into points, and only the top 3 disciples, ranked according to their total points, will receive the Blood Yuan fruit as a reward." The news immediately shocked the core disciples. Blood Yuan fruit would be given as reward? They did not know that this was the result of an agreement between the two forces. However, Yi Shiwen knew about this in advance, and was relatively calm. But this was the Blood Yuan fruit. Even the Xiantian realm masters would consider it a top-class treasure, and could have a breakthrough if consumed. Everyone started to pity the disciples who had already opted out. But if you were defeated or killed, then the score will correspond to a total of that person's accumulated points, and will be instantly transferred to the one who defeated you. So you must be very careful. I hope that some of you will come back alive," the Fat Elder said with a sigh, because even he didn't know how many would die in the Blood Yuan Territory. But if they survived through this, then they would undoubtedly become an outstanding expert. Yi Shiwen was speechless. The rule actually encouraged killing each other. There were a lot of scoring methods, like, one could kill the demon beasts, or one could collect treasure items to score points. However, none of these were quicker than killing someone and obtaining his accumulated points. No matter how much points a person had earned, it could all be transferred to his killer in an instant. The world of core disciples was really a cruel one, filled with brutality and killing. Compared to core sect disciples, the lives of the inner sect and outer sect disciples were much easier, although they couldn't obtain many resources to practice, but they were relatively well protected. Chapter 49. Agility skill test. The core disciples looked calm and collected, especially those several top disciples. It was obvious that they had already prepared themselves for the coming competition. This time, the core disciples' competition at Blood Yuan territory would not be simple. It was a small territory filled with demon beasts, and they also needed to be wary of the Zhang disciples, and especially their top core disciples, because handling them would not be easy even for the top core disciples of Yuan school. However, if this competition was not difficult or life-threatening, then why would they give 3 Blood Yuan fruits as the reward? Blood Yuan fruit was something even the experts of Xiantian realm dreamt of. Then, the 2 elders led Yuan school's core disciples and headed towards the backside of Qingfeng Mountain. Since everyone had practiced agility-type martial arts, all of them were very fast, and only after about half an hour had passed, they entered the depths of Qingfeng Mountain. The 2 elders unleashed a terrible aura that surrounded the squad of core disciples, and because of that, the demon beasts did not dare to approach them. This allowed them to smoothly travel to precipitous mountain peak. They were surprised to find that this mountain peak was so high that it seemed as if it was reaching the ends of the sky, and there was also an abnormal steep mountainside, which was completely submerged in the sea of clouds. At the foot of that mountain, there were small steps which could accommodate more than one person at the same time. The steps were circling around like a mountain road, going all the way to the summit. In a while, the people of Zhang family also came, led by 2 Zhang elders. One was tall, another was short, with their faces looked cold and skinny. This contrast they made with the fat and slim elders of Yuan school was quite hilarious. However, none of these elders was someone one could laugh at. Behind the 2 elders, there was a group of dozens of Zhang's elite disciples, led by 7 young people. Just from looking at them, one could say that they were all very arrogant and possessed a very imposing aura. From the whispers of the Yuan school disciples, Yi Shiwen finally got to know that these 7 young men were actually this term's top players of Zhang core disciples. The strongest of them were Zhang Jingxin, Zhang Wu and Zhang Yuelian. All of them were at the peak of Hotian 9th stage, and were only a step away from entering the Xiantian realm, while the remaining 4 top disciples were Zhang Yuntian, Zhang Wenxiao, Zhang Ziqiu and Zhang Guiqi, who were at the late Hotian 9th stage. Their imposing aura had completely overwhelmed the Yuan school's core disciples. Yuan school's top players, who had become quite famous this year, were only 3. Yi Feng had joined later, and Yi Shiwen had suddenly popped out recently. However, even after adding both Yi Feng and Yi Shiwen, numerically, Yuan school was still at a disadvantage. Yuan school's core disciples looked at the top disciples of Zhang family, and Zhang core disciples also looked at Yuan school's top disciples. Everyone was aware of the fact that the result of this competition would completely depend on these top 12 players. Yi Shiwen soon felt a stare from 2 pairs of pernicious eyes, looking at him with pure killing intent. He immediately retraced the stares with his own stare, and saw Zhang Yunfei and Zhang Yuntian. Now that they've also arrived, let's get started, the fat elder said. It seemed that the 4 elders of Xiantian had a previous agreement. They quickly jumped up and suddenly, their figures rushed towards the mountain road and disappeared in front of everyone in a flash. The 4 Xiantian level elders had disappeared. Several top disciples from both schools didn't wait even for a moment and jumped out immediately, following after the elders. With their figures like the lightning flash, they had instantly skimmed on the mountain road. Seeing that these talented disciples had already skimmed out without wasting any time, quickly, other core disciples also followed up. But unfortunately, they were already far behind in this race, which had ironically just begun. The race had quickly turned into a stampede of disciples, due to sudden disappearance of elders and top disciples. In this crowd, the 4 elders of Xiantian level were the fastest, and almost like a lightning, they had disappeared on the mountain road. Next were the Yi Feng and other top disciples of Yuan school, and Zhang family, which together made the first group. Right behind the first group was the group which mainly consisted of 30 Hotian 9th stage disciples, although they were not the top players. But they had certainly reached the Hotian 9th stage, so their speeds were slightly lower than the top disciples. Next was the group of Hotian 8th stage disciples, but there was a whole one-stage gap between them, the group of Hotian 9th stage, so their speeds were much lower in comparison. When everyone had already left, Yi Shiwen finally started and leapt towards the mountain road. Yi Ziwen's figure was as fast as the lightning. He immediately unleashed the celestial step, and within 2 or 3 breaths, his feet had already embarked on the road. Yi Ziwen's appearance looked elegant and unrestrained, as if he was taking a stroll. His figure flicked on above the mountain road, and with each flash, it would emerge 10 meters ahead, which clearly displayed his astonishing speed. Celestial Step was a superior agility-type technique, and its applications were totally incomparable. It was much more elegant and unconventional compared to other agility-type techniques. It seemed as if a celestial being was strolling at an astonishing speed. Within a few minutes, Yi Shiwen had already caught up with the last bunch of disciples in the race, who were far ahead of him initially. The bunch consisted of Hotian 8th stage disciples from Zhang family. Most of these disciples did not know agility-type martial arts. Even if some of them did know, their agility-type martial arts were nothing compared to the Xiantian level Celestial Step. Also, Yi Shiwen had practiced it to a Desheng level in special space. Almost in a flash, relying on the incredible speed of Celestial Step, Yi Shiwen overtook those disciples. They could not even react because all they saw was a shadow that flew over them for an instant, then disappeared. Now Yi Shiwen also understood that all of this was to test the agility skill of each and every individual. Generally, if understanding of the agility skill was profound, then one could achieve greater speeds, and then this race would become a child's play. Holy crap! Who is this person? The Zhang disciples could only see Yi Ziwen's back from very far, and did not recognize who he was. In a flash, Yi Shiwen had disappeared in front of them. Seeing that Yi Shiwen had so effortlessly overtaken them in the race, those Zhang disciples felt depressed. Because, no matter how much they tried, they still couldn't catch up with Yi Shiwen, and this had caused even the glorious masters of Hotian 8th stage to get depressed. They held high status in Zhang family as the 8th stage core disciples. But right now, almost all of these Zhang super experts were depressed. But they were not the only ones who were depressed. When Yi Shiwen started using the full extent of Celestial Step, and adding his own monstrous strength, he got insanely faster. His figure simply turned into a blur, and he rushed up the mountain path, leaving many of the Yiyuan school and Zhang family disciples behind. They could only give dumbfounded looks to the blurred figure of Yi Shiwen, who in a flash had disappeared from their eyes. Except for secretly getting envious and angry, they could not do anything, and their only option was to keep on running. Chapter 50. It's actually him? Yi Shiwen's speed was extremely fast, and his maneuvers looked so elegant. It seemed as if a celestial being was taking a stroll through the mountains. He had already overtaken the 3rd and 4th groups of Hotian 8th stage disciples, and his speed was getting more and more fast, and in a moment, the 2nd group came into his field of view. This group consisted of Hotian 9th stage disciples. Those disciples in the 2nd group, who were running with all their might, trying to catch up with the 1st group, suddenly heard a burst of rapid footsteps from behind. When they turned to look, they were surprised to find that Yi Shiwen was catching up with them at an astonishing speed. But, before they could get some time to comprehend what was happening, Yi Ziwen's figure quickly shuttled across them at an insane speed. The crowd had a stunned look on their faces as they saw Yi Ziwen's blurred figure slowly disappear right in front of their eyes. There was no doubt that these people were elite among the elites, and their agility skill techniques were also practiced to a higher level. Most of them had practiced their agility techniques up to the Xiaoqing realm. However, in the face of the mind-boggling speed displayed by Yi Shiwen, it seemed as if they had not moved at all. They simply couldn't react, and before they could, Yi Shiwen had already overtaken the 2nd group, and had completely disappeared from their sights. After that, Yi Shiwen began to chase after the 1st group, unhurried, while displaying a rhythmic elegant motion. although it was very obvious that this was a test of agility skills, but there were no scores involved in this test. So basically there was no need to be impatient. At this time Yi Shiwen had run up to the middle of the mountainside, which was wrapped entirely by a dense fog and clouds. The visibility was so less that even the eyesight of a skilled martial arts practitioner, like Yi Shiwen, was limited only to a distance of 10 meters. And once someone got careless, they would definitely fall down, meeting a cruel death. Also, even if it was a master of the Hotian 9th stage, the chances of his survival would be 0. Most people would choose to slow down in such a life-threatening situation, but Yi Shiwen was not afraid of it. Although Celestial Step was an agility technique, and it also increased the speed of the practitioner dramatically, but it was best suited for small-scale maneuvers like this. Also, Yi Shiwen had practiced Celestial Step to the Deshang realm. So, how could he possibly fall down? After a few jumps, he reached the corner of the mountain, and from there, he directly jumped and drilled through the dense fog-shrouded mountainside area. At this time, the first group was already faintly visible from the back, and the one running on the very back of this group was surprisingly Zhang Yuntian, who had challenged Yi Shiwen and lost pathetically. Then the next were Yi Yuan School's Qian Wanru, Wu Hao and Zhang family's Zhang Wenxiao, Zhang Ziqiu and Zhang Guoqi, all in a sequence. They were all keeping their paces without slowing down or going faster. However, Zhang Yuntian had fallen behind them, and his movements were also not smooth. It was obvious that this was the impact of the injuries he had got in his fight with Yi Shiwen. Zhang Yuntian heard footsteps from behind, and felt a little strange. He turned his head to look, but what he saw made him completely shocked. It's actually you, Yi Shiwen. Before, he had been paying attention to Yi Shiwen, but, just after the start of race, he had discovered that Yi Shiwen had been left far behind, and had simply disappeared. He did not care, although he had personal hatred for Yi Shiwen, but right now, he just wanted to concentrate on the race. Being one of the top core disciples from Zhang family, he had a status to maintain. Also, Yi Shiwen was now one of the top disciples from Yi Yuan School, and he didn't want to cause problems right from the beginning of the exam. But he would never have thought that Yi Shiwen would actually catch up with the first group. How could he be so fast? When Yi Shiwen came closer, Zhang Yuntian took a closer look at his elegant maneuvers, and his heart was suddenly taken aback. He always thought that the most impressive skill that Yi Shiwen possessed was his blade skill. From his perspective, Yi Ziwen's blade skill was accurate, decisive, extremely gorgeous, and it could be said that Yi Shiwen was the best blade user in the younger generation of both the schools. But he had not expected that Yi Ziwen's agility skill would also be so terrifying. He knew that his own agility was an intermediate-level technique, which he had practiced to the Deshang level. And Yi Shiwen was not even a Hotian 9th stage master, so how could he possess such an astonishing speed? By now, he had realized that his own speed was nowhere close to Yi Ziwen's speed. And not just that, Yi Ziwen's agility skill was also superior to his own agility skill. However, he knew very well that no matter how superior an agility skill actually was, it was still necessary for the practitioner to practice it to a very profound level in order to attain this level of astonishing speed. While his mind was in a confused state, Yi Shiwen had already caught up with him. In a flash, he had already reached the front part of the first group. By this time, they all had been close to the top of the hill, and Yi Shiwen was finally able to see the figure of those several top disciples, and running in the first place was unexpectedly his elder brother Yi Feng. Yi Feng was leading the race, and it seemed as if he was flying up the mountain using his extraordinary agility skills, followed by the two disciples of Zhang family, Zhang Jingxin and Zhang Wu. Right behind them was another disciple from Yi Yuan School, Zhang Yang, and finally at the last place was a disciple of Zhang family, Zhang Yuelian. Yi Feng suddenly rushed half a step, and became the first person to reach the summit. For elders were standing at the summit, waiting for the arrival of disciples, and from their faces, it could be seen that they themselves were very curious to find out about the winner of this race. Seeing that the first one to arrive was Yi Feng, both fat and thin elders had a smile on their faces. Apparently, they were quite satisfied with this outcome. However, The faces of the two Zhang elders had a slightly sunken look, only a single step behind Yifeng. The second person to arrive was Zhang Jingxin, who had only missed Yifeng by half a body distance. Similarly, Zhang Wu also reached the summit, falling behind Zhang Jingxin by half a body distance, and Zhang Yang got the fourth place. And with this, Yiyuan School's fame had also reached the summit. From the first group of top disciples, only Zhang Yuelian did not come in. He was about to reach the summit with few other disciples behind him, but suddenly, a figure like a lightning instantly overtook Zhang Yuelian and reached the summit. "It's you, third brother, you are awesome." This person was actually Yi Shiwen, and this had caused a lot of people to call out in alarm. It was not because they had not noted him. It was because they had paid attention to him from the very beginning. After he had defeated Zhang Yuntian, they had all got wary of his existence, and had also labeled him as a strong enemy. When the race had started, Yi Shiwen had fallen behind, and was literally the last person in the race. If he had started running at the same time as others, then his rank would definitely not be fifth. Especially, the complexion of the Zhang disciples was somewhat unsightly. They all knew that if Yi Shiwen had not dawdled in the beginning of the race, then going by his astonishing speed and agility skill, he would definitely have scored a first or second rank in this race, and then first two ranks might have gone to the Yiyuan School. However, no one continued to think this race matter for too long, because their main motive was not a race, but the competition at Blood Yuan territory. Immediately, everyone began to meditating to restore the Zhen Qi that had been consumed while running all the way up to the summit. Chapter 51. Blood Yuan territory. All of the disciples had exhausted their Zhen Qi, while dashing all the way up to the summit in one go. However, Yi Shiwen's face didn't seem fatigued at all, because the Zhen Qi present in his body was way more vigorous than the masters of the peak Hotian 7th stage. And the reason for that was the widening of the meridians in his body. Although a large amount of his Zhen Qi had been consumed, but this consumption was still far from the point where he would feel exhausted. After Yi Zaiwen's arrival, a while later, other disciples had also arrived one by one. All of the disciples had arrived, and were resting in order to recover the exhausted Zhen Qi. When everyone was ready, the elders announced that they were going to open the Blood Yuan territory. 4 elders together summoned a sophisticated sealing method. This was something everyone was waiting for. With a bang, the side of the cliff started to move just like a gate, which slowly opened, and a dazzling light came from behind the gate. No one could clearly see anything behind the gate, but Yi Shiwen knew that there was a small world behind this cliff, and this little world was connected to the main world through a constantly changing chaotic space. Good. Blood Yuan territory has been opened. Everyone quickly go in. But you must remember that you have only a month's time. And within this 1 month's period, you must go to the Fengye Mountain, which is located in the central regions of Blood Yuan territory, and then you must come back as well. If you got lost and couldn't come out in the allotted 1 month's time, then in that case, the next opening time is 10 years later. I hope everyone will keep this in mind. The fat elder explained. More than 200 young experts immediately jumped off and flew into the gate. Yi Zaiwen's movements were definitely not slow, and he shuttled into the gate. He crossed through the distorted chaotic space, and finally appeared inside the Blood Yuan territory, and suddenly, he felt a divine lingqi blowing on his face. This place was rich in divine lingqi compared to the outside world. If he were to practice here, then he could actually have twice the improvement with half the effort. No wonder this was the most central part of the rumors. Those formidable sects established the core sections of their sect stations in these microcosms. Yi Shiwen said with a sigh. He had seen in some miscellanies that these formidable sects placed the core section of their sects in these small worlds. And not only were these small worlds rich in various resources, which also acted as the last means to resist against the enemy, those sects possessed supernatural powers, and they would install matrix methods in these small worlds. These matrix methods were controlled by the ancestor of the sect, and in the moment of an emergency, the ancestor would start the matrix method instantly in order to avoid the enemy. He glanced around inside the Blood Yuan territory, and actually saw a small world covered with greenery in all directions. It was a beautiful new world that was small but filled with plenty of lingqi. Since no one else was around, Yi Shiwen realized that when they had entered the gate, each of them must have been transmitted to a different place inside the Blood Yuan territory. Yi Shiwen gawked for a moment, but he did not stop and headed towards the central region of Blood Yuan territory. The curtain of night gradually descended, and a bright moonlight enveloped the earth resembling a white blanket. It was illuminating the whole piece of land with white and serene light. Inside the dark and gloomy forest, occasionally, several streaks of moonlight projected through the dense foliage on the ground, which was fully covered of fallen leaves, forming luminous spots on the ground, and like this, only a few rays of moonlight were entering this dark and gloomy forest. Deep inside the forest, sometimes faint roars of unknown beasts would spread, sending the chills down the spine of anyone. Yi Shiwen had been sauntering inside the Blood Yuan territory for almost a day and sun had finally set. But even with all of his efforts, he had not encountered a single valuable target in this dark and gloomy forest. Although it was a small world compared to the Wuxia world, but the size of this world was absolutely not small. A breeze gently caressed against his face, and suddenly a rustling sound spread over from all directions. Yi Shiwen stopped, and not far from him, there was a nearly 2 meters tall, more than 3 meters long and dark purple-colored leopard quietly standing on the top of the tree branch. Its soft and smooth fur was reflecting the moonlight with a touch of dark and light colors. Its limbs looked strong and full of explosive strength. Its sharp claws could easily tear off its prey, and it had a strong jaw from which it was exuding low and deep roars from time to time. The sight of this demon beast in this moonlit dark night and gloomy forest could easily scare any human. The cold and sharp eyes were staring non-stop at Yi Shiwen. He had read many books on demon beasts, and after thinking a bit, he finally recognized that this demon beast was called Yueying Bao. It was not just a speed-type demon beast, but it also moved quietly like a shadow, and its dark purple color worked as a camouflage in the night. On top of that, it also possessed an enormous strength. All these traits made this quiet shadow leopard a very tough opponent. Considering its cultivation level, it was definitely a high-level demon beast. The adults of its race could reach the peak of Hotian 9th stage, and some could even evolve into Xiantian realm demon beasts. These beasts lived in the depths of Fengya Mountain. Yi Shiwen couldn't understand the reason why he encountered one at the edge of the mountain forest. Like a quiet and well-behaved kitten, Quiet Shadow Leopard gracefully jumped from the tree and stepped on the ground covered with leaves. The scariest thing was its silent movements. Although Quiet Shadow Leopard was on a higher cultivation level compared to Yi Shiwen, and the strength of a demon beast was greater than a human on the same cultivation level. However, Yi Shiwen was also an anomaly, and his strength couldn't be weighed against his cultivation level. Quiet Yingbao walked slowly in a big circle around Yi Shiwen, and it seemed as if it was trying to understand him. When it was behind him, suddenly the Quiet Shadow Leopard roared and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. It opened its huge mouth, displaying countless sharp steel-like teeth shining in the moonlight, and a stench blew on his face. Quiet Shadow Leopard's movements were fast, and its figure looked like a shadow. But Yi Shiwen was well prepared. He had been paying attention to the movements of this beast, and in an instant he easily dodged the attack of Quiet Shadow Leopard. He instantly drew out his long blade, and reflexively chopped out with an incredible force towards the face of that Quiet Shadow Leopard. If his blade had struck its face, then even if the other party was a tough demon beast, its brain would have immediately burst out of its body. However, Quiet Shadow Leopard was clever, and when it saw that the long blade coming straight at its face, it immediately jumped several meters back. It was actually very fast, and after dodging the blade attack, it looked warily at Yi Shiwen. Boom! With a loud noise, the long blade had punched a 1-foot-long crack in the ground, and had also caused a microseism in the surrounding area for a moment. That Quiet Shadow Leopard was looking warily at Yi Shiwen. He had not expected him to be so monstrously strong. This extent of physical strength was simply too terrifying. Although Quiet Shadow Leopard was at the peak of Hotian 9th stage, but it excelled at speed over strength, therefore it was scared of Yi Shiwen's terrifying strength. However, Even if it was scared of Yi Zaiwen's monstrous strength, it was not willing to leave, constantly producing a deep whooshing sound. Yi Shiwen noticed that Quiet Shadow Leopard actually knew who was stronger between the two of them, but it had still not left. It was said that demon beasts were comparatively more intelligent than ordinary beasts, and when they would face a stronger opponent, they would try to avoid fighting and prefer to escape. Evidently, this was not necessarily the case this time. Chapter 52. If you commit suicide, then I will leave your corpse intact. Suddenly, the Quiet Shadow Leopard's shrill roar broke out, and with a faster pace than earlier, it pounced and arrived in front of Yi Shiwen in a blink of an eye. Its speed was so fast that it literally seemed as if a dark purple lightning had struck. Yi Shiwen could even see its ghastly scarlet teeth in the moonlight, aiming to bite his neck off. Yi Shiwen didn't get enough time to think, and the long blade danced in his hands, releasing a terrifying daoqi that instantly swept towards the Quiet Shadow Leopard, who jumped away to avoid the attack. But the daoqi had already cut off a large wound on its body. After getting injured, it seemed as if Quiet Shadow Leopard had become bloodthirsty. It once again ferociously leapt, raising its sharp claws, and it literally went flying towards Yi Shiwen. If it had grabbed Yi Shiwen in its clutches, then even the body an expert as strong as him would get pierced right away. Yi Shiwen crouched down to avoid its deadly attack, and his backhand blade attacked fiercely towards the Quiet Shadow Leopard's soft lower abdomen. Yi Shiwen only felt a slight lag, and his long blade's tip inserted into the abdomen of Quiet Shadow Leopard, and came directly out of its back with a lot of blood gushing out of its body. Roar! Quiet Shadow Leopard gave out a shrill cry. Without the slightest hesitation, Yi Shiwen gave a backhand twist to his blade, and the zhenqi attached to his long blade instantly exploded. In an instant, the Quiet Shadow Leopard's internal organs had been destroyed and looked similar to a pile of mud. Quiet Shadow Leopard roared twice, and after struggling for a while, it finally died. Yi Shiwen kicked its dead body to the side, while taking his blade out of his body. This Blood Yuan territory was not similar to the outside world. Even the same demon beasts here were more powerful and fiercer compared to their counterparts in the outside world. Quiet Shadow Leopards were a rare sight in the outside world. However, they were present in abundance here in Blood Yuan territory. The formation of such a small world, according to an old legend, occurred from the broken fragments of space left behind after the fight between ancient experts. The ability of these ancient people was not something Yi Shiwen could comprehend. In addition to this small world, there were also some secondary planes, with unusual conditions. There were some with extremely cold environment, others filled with volcanic rocks, and each had different kinds of strange life forms existing inside. Legends about them were mentioned in the miscellany, but the information it contained was very ambiguous. In a blink of an eye, 3 days had passed, and Yi Shiwen had covered a long distance in the direction of central region of Fengye Mountain. Fengye Mountain, in the entire Blood Yuan territory, was very prominent because it was the highest mountain in the Blood Yuan territory, covered with crimson-colored maple trees. Its peak was so high that it actually billowed into the clouds. Fengye Mountain was the goal of Yi Shiwen, because it was the place where Blood Yuan fruit could be found. As long as he followed into the direction of Fengye Mountain, he would not get lost. However, during these 3 days, it could be said that he did not have a single moment of peace. Demon beasts were present everywhere in the Blood Yuan territory, and the weakest among them had already reached the Hotian 5th stage. There were no weak demon beasts present inside the Blood Yuan territory, and whether it was day or night, he had to be careful of the surprise attacks from these demon beasts, which was quite bothersome for him. But Yi Shiwen slowly adapted to this rhythm. After all, he had roamed a lot in the backside of Qingfeng Mountain Forest, which was also filled with demon beasts. During these 3 days, Yi Shiwen had beheaded more than a dozen Hotian 9th stage demon beasts, and had also found some very precious herbs. It could be said that he had already made a lot of money on this trip. The points of Yi Zaiwen's Yaopai had quickly reached 1,000 points, but Yi Shiwen felt that this was not enough. In fact, it was far from enough. What he desired was the Blood Yuan fruit, because it was a treasure that even Xiantian realm masters would drool over. If he succeeded in obtaining one, then it would be very beneficial towards his future practice. Ha ha ha. It took me 3 days to find you and I finally find you. Yi Shiwen, if you commit suicide then I'll leave your dead body intact. Suddenly, a rampant laughter came from the horizon. A figure grazed over the tree tops. And in a while, it had come in front of Yi Shiwen. It was actually Zhang Yuntian. There was a murderous look on his face when he was looking at Yi Shiwen, as if wishing to kill him right now. He was one of the top disciples among the Zhang core disciples. And when he received such a disgrace, it was far worse than getting killed. Although Yi Shiwen had showed him mercy, but in his view, he had actually been humiliated. It was the greatest shame in his life, and the only way to wash this shame off his body was to kill Yi Shiwen. It's you, Yi Shiwen said while pulling out the long blade from the scabbard tied to his back. Yi Shiwen, a few days ago, you humiliated me in front of everyone. My hatred towards you is absolutely irreconcilable. Today is the day of your death, however. If you commit suicide then I'll leave your dead body intact. Zhang Yuntian laughed and said, I see. It seems you have gone deranged. That day, in front of a large crowd, I had showed you mercy, but do you think now you can have such luck? Yi Shiwen said while sneering again and again. Today, I'll slaughter you without showing any mercy. Zhang Yenshin's complexion suddenly turned red just like a monkey's ass. Yi Shiwen's words had deeply hurt his pride. Do you think I have come alone today? Since you refused to commit suicide, then I will kill you first then feed you to the demon beasts. Zhang Yuntian gritted his teeth and said. Not far from Zhang Yuntian, 5 or 6 figures suddenly emerged and soon arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen quickly recognized them. In addition to Zhang Yuntian's brother Zhang Yunfei, second-ranked top disciple, Zhang Wu, had also come along with Zhang Ziqiu, who was also one of the top core disciples. In total 7 core disciples, including 3 top figures, had just now appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. Other 4 were also the masters of Hotian 9th stage, although not at the top level like the other 3, but they were still extremely powerful. In order to kill Yi Shiwen, Zhang Yuntian had gathered a lot of strong masters. Yi Shiwen, you will die today. First I will cripple you and feed you to the demon beasts. Then I will watch while you are bitten to death. Zhang Yunfei said with a cruel look on his face. After getting defeated by Yi Shiwen, the 2 brothers had been unable to lift their heads in front of other members of the Zhang family. His heart was filled with extreme hate towards Yi Shiwen, and he just wanted to tear him to shreds and torture him in the most vicious ways possible before killing him. All of this just to eliminate the hate inside of his heart, and to wash off the shame Yi Shiwen had imposed on him. Chapter 53, Killed Instead. Yi Shiwen, you will die today. First I will cripple you and feed you to the demon beasts. Then I will watch while you are bitten to death. Zhang Yunfei said with a cruel look on his face. The other Zhang disciples also had a cruel look on their faces. There always was an enmity between Yi Yuan school and Zhang family, although they maintained a calm and tranquil look on their faces in front of Yi Yuan school's people. But that was on the surface only. Yi Shiwen was undoubtedly the newly emerging genius of Yi Yuan school, and suppressing a talent before it had fully grown was the most effective way to eliminate a future threat. Therefore, they had readily accepted Zhang Yenshin's idea to gang up on Yi Shiwen. You will. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, Gee, if so many experts died at once then it would severely weaken the Zhang family. Everyone kill this insolent fool, but first, I want him crippled. Zhang Yuntian roared with a fierce expression on his face. Several Hotian 9th stage disciples of Zhang family rushed together towards Yi Shiwen, with all kinds of martial arts blooming in their hands. Although they were young, but they still were the masters of Hotian 9th stage, so how could their attacks be so simple? Various colorful jinqi exploded together in the air, and a terrifying shock wave rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Clang! Yi Shiwen instantly unsheathed his long blade, which was blooming with dazzling light. The long blade directly cut straight through the air towards the arriving shock wave. Boom! Accompanied with a loud air explosion, Yi Ziwen's long blade completely cut off all their attacks. Yi Shiwen's blade instantly drew 9 blade shadows which spread in the sky like a curtain of blades, and enveloped a Zhang disciple. "Bold, you are courting death." Zhang Wu suddenly got furious and gave out a loud shout, and suddenly shot a spear with a high degree of proficiency. The spear was covered in a terrifying spurky, and it flew straight towards Yi Shiwen at an astonishing speed. If it had hit Yi Shiwen, then it would have directly pierced right through him, taking his life right away. Even after being attacked by a menacing Zhang Wu, Yi Ziwen's berserk mode did not stop. In fact, it actually got worse. With a rumbling, thundering sound, his long blade slashed straight towards a Zhang disciple of Hotian 9th stage, and instantly bisected him. This was the terrifying New Moon Beheader, and its trademark trait was that it would instantly cover all the escape routes and leave nowhere for the target to run. The only option left would be to face Yi Ziwen's terrifying long blade head-on. Yi Shiwen pulled back his long blade, splashing the blood drops on it, and instantly attacked towards Zhang Wu's spear. At this time, Zhang Wu's spear had already arrived in front of Yi Shiwen and was about to pierce his body. Dang! A loud metal clashing sound spread all over, and Yi Ziwen's long blade easily deflected Zhang Wu's spear. Yi Shiwen had beheaded a Zhang disciple, and this had made Zhang Wu very furious. He shouted in a voice filled with anger, "Today, even if the great king of immortals was to descend to this place, he would not be able to save you. I will give you a miserable death. You want to kill me? Today, I will decide whether you people are going to live or die." Yi Shiwen screamed, and the long blade in his hands shone brightly like a star. An endless amount of Zhen Qi burst forth, causing a terrifying air explosion. "Missing Moon Beheader!" Yi Shiwen roared, and his long blade instantly chopped out towards Zhang Wu like a falling meteor. Boom! Zhang Wu shot a terrifying spurky towards Yi Shiwen. Again! Yi Ziwen's second blade chopped out almost instantly without any stagnation between the two strikes. Boom! With a loud explosion sound, the long blade struck on Zhang Wu's spear, and he felt that his hands had gone numb. Yi Ziwen's strength was so terrifying that his blade strike could even explode a mountain. If Zhang Wu was not at the peak of Hotian 9th stage, with his strength already approaching the strength of 99 tigers, then this blade strike was strong enough to send him flying. Zhang Wu's eyes were filled with an inconceivable look, because this scene was simply unimaginable. How could Yi Shiwen, who had not even reached the Hotian 9th stage, actually block his offensive spear attacks, and what kind of terrifying strength did he possess in order to repel the attacks from a master of peak Hotian 9th stage? Third blade. The third blade was even more terrifyingly powerful, but at this time, other Zhang disciples finally reacted and rushed over towards Yi Shiwen, all at once. Yi Ziwen's blade instantly changed direction and chopped off towards Zhang Yunfei. Zhang Yunfei was considered the fastest among the Hotian 8th stage disciples, and wanted to torture Yi Shiwen to death. When he saw that Yi Shiwen was busy fighting with Zhang Wu, he had suddenly thought of this as an opportunity, and had rushed up for a sneak attack. "Idiot, do you think I couldn't kill you last time?" Yi Shiwen shouted, and his long knife completely turned directly towards Zhang Yunfei and chopped off. This strike was lightning fast, and immediately chopped down. "Don't!" Zhang Yenshin's eyes turned red, and he exhaled loudly. However, there was no way to save Zhang Yunfei, because his fate had already been sealed. "Puchi!" Zhang Yunfei was frightened when he saw Yi Ziwen's long blade advancing towards him. But he didn't get any time to react, and was instantly split into two halves. "No, little brother Yi Shiwen, I am going to kill you." Zhang Yuntian had suddenly gone demented and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. But how could he be Yi Ziwen's match? Yi Ziwen's long blade, like a brilliant meteor, flew across the sky, while splitting the air and directly chopped down Zhang Yuntian into two halves. Those Zhang disciples could not believe their eyes. How was this possible? In such a short period of time, 3 of their own had been killed by Yi Shiwen, including Zhang Yuntian, who was one of the top core disciples, and was quite famous among the Zhang disciples. But he was still chopped down so easily by Yi Shiwen. It was like a calamity to them who had come to kill, but had been killed instead. "Everyone kill him, we absolutely cannot let him grow up." Zhang Ziqiu roared. How old was Yi Shiwen? Not even 20 years old, and he was already so terrifying. If he was left to fully grow up, then how terrible he would turn out to be. just thinking about had sent chills down their spines. Yi Shiwen was dressed in dark green clothes, and his black hair was flying wildly. He was carrying a long blade in his hand from which crimson blood was dripping constantly. He had an ice-cold expression on his face which was very frightening, as if the demon god from ancient times had come back to life to wreak havoc on everything. However, before Zhang Ziqiu could finish what he was saying, Yi Ziwen's Daoqi had chopped down, and before he could even have a chance to react, this Daoqi had already chopped him down into 2 halves. You have actually killed so many people from our Zhang family. You will die, because our Zhang family will not let you off. A Hotian 9th stage disciple clamored. Idiot! No matter how many of you Zhang people I kill here, your Zhang family will have no way to trace it back to me. Moreover, as long as I kill all of you, no one will know that I did it. It is a great idea, isn't it? So I dare you, try to run away. Let's see if you can outrun me. Yi Shiwen said, and unleashed celestial step. As if a celestial being had gone out on a stroll, elegant and effortlessly, he had instantly rushed to the front of that disciple of the Hotian 9th stage, and chopped him into many pieces. Yi Shiwen was extremely fast, and his long blade seemed like the thunder itself. Within seconds, he had completely beheaded rest of the Zhang disciples. Zhang Wu turned around to escape, and had taken only a few steps, however, was immediately overtaken by Yi Shiwen. The terrifying long blade slashed right at him, and he met his end quite fast. Chapter 54. A mysterious expert appears after all of the Zhang disciples had been killed. Yi Shiwen seized their things. He gained a total of 30,000 low-grade spirit stones, although they were not as rich as him. But in the end, they still held the position of core disciples, and this amount was enough to call them rich. Also, Yi Shiwen was already rich enough to be compared to a Xiantian realm master. Most importantly, the score on Yi Ziwen's Yaopai had gone up to 5,000 points. Although all this time, these people were looking for Yi Shiwen, but they had not forgotten to accumulate points on the way, and that was the reason why their total score was so high. When Yi Shiwen killed them, their combined score got transferred to his Yaopai, and all of a sudden, his accumulated points reached 5,000 points. When the points in his Yaopai increased, he reaffirmed that these rules were truly to encourage mutual fighting. After seizing their things, he didn't stay there for too long. He quickly fled into the forest and disappeared. In the forest, a group of 7 or 8 individuals were rapidly jumping from one tree to another. All of them were the masters of Hotian 9th stage, including this year's strongest top core disciple of Zhang family, named Zhang Jingxin, and the strongest female top disciple, Zhang Yuelian. The most surprising thing about this group was that it was not being led by Zhang Jingxin or Zhang Yuelian either, but some other guy, a handsome youth who seemed to be in his 20s. Brother Lu, Zhang Jingxin said, these Yi Yuan school disciples are very troublesome, so we should just go and kill them all right now. That youth surnamed Lu frowned then said, those Yi Yuan school disciples are dispersed throughout the forest. Finding and killing them one by one will take a lot of time. Moreover, those Yi Yuan disciples don't pose much of a threat to my plans. It's obvious, Brother Liu's ability is invincible, but that Yi Yuan school's Yi Feng is said to have entered half a step into the Xiantian realm, and he can be considered as an extremely tough opponent. Also, his brother Yi Shiwen had easily defeated our core disciples, and all those who have seen him fighting say that his strength is unfathomable. Zhang Jingxin said, don't worry, although he has entered half a step into the Xiantian realm, but he is still nothing compared to me. When the time comes, killing him won't be so difficult. The youth surnamed Lu impatiently said, and it doesn't matter. Our main focus should be on reaching the Fengya mountain where blood yuan fruit trees are located. When the time comes, we will obliterate anyone who comes in our way. In order to obtain a blood yuan fruit, you people and those core disciples from Yi Yuan school have come to blood yuan territory to participate in this core disciples competition. I am determined to win this competition and receive a blood yuan fruit, and when the time comes, I will be able to break into the Zhendao realm. At that time, you people will also reap a lot of benefits. The youth surnamed Lu said in a relaxed tone. Indeed, serving under Brother Lu is our greatest pleasure. Zhang Jingxin hastily said. But you should not be too hasty. Wait for me to enter into the Zhendao realm. Then promoting all of you into the Xiantian realm will be a child's play. The youth surnamed Lu said. There's no need to hurry, because there's still some time left for the blood yuan fruit to fully mature. Whether yuan school disciples, or those demon beasts, they won't start fighting for the fruit before it fully ripens. Once the time comes, we will attack and kill all of them, whether it's those yuan disciples, or the demon beasts of blood yuan territory. Blood yuan fruit won't go anywhere, so we don't need to worry about it for now. I know that yuan core disciples are hiding themselves and planning something. So, let's go and enhance your strengths first, and when the final battle starts, then you all can prove your usefulness. Yes, Zhang's disciples agreed in succession and looked very excited. After all, they would be able to enhance their strengths, so why wouldn't they be happy? There were innumerable giant trees present inside the Blood Yuan forest, covering the entire range of sight with absolutely no end. One could hear the sound of apes eating and shaking the branches on these giant trees. Several silver-haired violent apes were issuing deafening roars. They had encircled a human figure and were constantly attacking him. These violent apes had enormous palms, resembling a big putuan, and could seriously injure a master of the Hotian 7th or 8th stage. Each of these violent apes was already at the peak of Hotian 9th stage, and adding their violent nature, they were very terrifying. However, there was a reckless young man standing in the middle of this group of violent apes, and was constantly bearing their attacks on his body. Bang! 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 The big palms of these violent apes were ruthlessly hitting on this young man's body, and he was uttering a stressed sound, as if trying to bear the intense pain. This young man was none other than Yi Shiwen. Since the killing of Zhang Yuntian and other Zhang disciples, 20 days had already passed. In these 20 days, he had spent his maximum time practicing his body and flesh by fighting with the demon beasts unarmed. In the beginning, even though his body was surprisingly strong, but such a direct confrontation with the violent apes had almost killed him. The punches of those violent apes had seriously wounded him. Although Yi Shiwen could have used his true power by using his blade to easily kill all of these apes, but right now, he needed to exceed the limit of his bow's strength. So, he was trying to exercise his own body and flesh to an extreme state, and bearing the attacks from these violent apes directly on his body was the best way to strengthen his body. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen possessed a lot of medicinal pills. He had killed many core disciples, and also that young lord named Luo Tian, who was also a Xiantian realm master. Yi Shiwen had seized a variety of high-quality medicinal pills, and whenever he got wounded by fighting unarmed with the violent apes, he would wildly use medicinal pills to heal his injuries. He had continuously used those pills to heal himself, and had trained non-stop for the last 2 weeks. With every injury that got cured, his body would become even stronger, and the tyrant's body technique would also progress a step. This technique was not only able to increase the strength, the toughness of the body and flesh could be rapidly improved, and now, he could easily kill a violent ape using just his hands. Right now, those violent apes were constantly hitting Yi Shiwen's body with their big palms, but their attacks couldn't even move him an inch. Ha! Yi Shiwen gave out a loud shout, and his palm slapped towards a violent ape, and with an explosion, it collided fiercely against its big palm. Rumble! 9 echoes of rushing thunder hand smacked, that had already come to the point of perfection. Being his first martial arts technique, he had already mastered it to a state of perfection. Bang! Kara! With a loud sound of fracture bone, Yi Shiwen had unexpectedly fractured the arm of a violent ape in one move. Roar! Violent ape bellowed. But Yi Shiwen didn't stop, and again slapped on the chest of violent ape, and this attack was fast that there was no way for the violent ape to dodge it. His palm, wrapped in a snow-white jinqi, smashed into the chest of a violent ape with an incredible force, and went right through its body. A violent ape had been killed, and right at that moment, other violent apes severely slapped their big hands on Yi Shiwen's body. Bang! 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 Chapter 55. Hotian ninth stage. The attacks of these violent apes left shallow blue bruises on Yi Zaiwen's body, but within a few breaths' time, all of these bruises completely disappeared. Yi Zaiwen's body had become very formidable. Yi Shiwen turned around 180 degrees and gave a solid punch to a violent ape, killing it instantly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bang! Yi Shiwen curled his fingers into a fist and punched out violently, which caused many air explosions. Bang! A loud noise of explosions spread out, and an endless amount of Zhenqi burst out everywhere in the surrounding. Boom! 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 Clang! With the sound of unsheathing a blade, a foot-long daoqi emerged from Yi Zaiwen's palm. Pick! Stab! Chop! Cut! A move after move, Yi Shiwen continued to use the blade skills, using his palms instead of his long blade. Each of his moves would kill a violent ape instantly, although these violent apes were at the Hotian ninth stage, but they still weren't his match. Yi Shiwen estimated that their combat strengths should be in between Hotian and Xiantian realms. They were the so-called half-step into Xiantian realm-type demon beasts. Now, Yi Shiwen could have a breakthrough anytime, and once he had a breakthrough, then he would be able to easily compete with the Xiantian realm master. The strength of his mortal body had already reached the strength of 99 tigers. That was the peak level for a Hotian realm expert. And if he continued to temper his body with all kinds of external forces, then his strength would finally reach the strength of a dragon. This unceasing massacre by Yi Shiwen had finally angered the violent ape king. It was a huge violent ape with its whole body covered with fiery red hair. There was a grim look on its face, and a pair of bloody red eyes was staring maliciously at Yi Shiwen. The violent ape king punched out its gigantic fist, and each fist produced layer upon layer of fire waves rushing towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen gathered the qi into both his palms, and directly shot up in the air, causing a huge air explosion accompanied with a sharp loud sound. Roar! Violent Ape King fiercely punched into Yi Zaiwen's chest, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, right at that moment, he also gave a lightning-fast direct kick on its belly. Dang! It felt as if Yi Shiwen had directly kicked on a steel plate. The violent Ape King only felt a momentary numbness in its body from the terrifying strength present in his kick, and retreated a few steps. This was not the first time he had fought with Violent Ape King. During the first fight, he had nearly died at the hands of Violent Ape King, because it was a demon beast that had actually entered half a step into the Xiantian realm. These types of demon beasts were terrifyingly strong, and could be compared to a semi-transformed Xiantian master. Yi Shiwen truly felt how overpowering a Xiantian master's strength could be. Although he had beheaded Luo Tian before, but he had already been wounded by Hua Menghan, and was extremely weak. Otherwise on that day, he would have died instead. All this time, Yi Shiwen had just been playing around with this giant ape, training his body externally at the same time. If he was just an ordinary master of peak Hotian 9th stage, then he would definitely have died at the hands of these violent apes. However, the tyrant's body technique had showed its terrible power during this training. Although his body looked slim, but it actually contained an explosive power condensed inside it. Although, right now, Yi Shiwen was a lot weaker than Violent Ape King, but as long he didn't receive a direct frontal attack from it, he could continue to heal his minor injuries by eating the medicinal pills, and like this he could keep on playing around with the Violent Ape King. Initially, his punches and kicks almost had no effect on the Violent Ape King, and even if he tried his best, he couldn't shake its huge body. But now, he had become stronger and could easily push it several steps back. In such a short interval of 10 days, the progress in his Boda's strength was simply unbelievable. The continuous process of getting beaten up and healing, again and again, to rapidly increase the body strength had actually worked. And finally, he had reached the critical point of Hotian 8th stage, and was only a step away from Hotian 9th stage. Once he entered the Hotian 9th stage, he would be able to climb a step above his current strength of 99 tigers, and would finally acquire the strength of a dragon. Yi Shiwen suddenly took out his long blade from the scabbard on his back, which released a bright light, and a daoqi, shaped like a long blade, chopped out towards the Violent Ape King. Violent Ape King suddenly punched out fire waves towards Yi Shiwen. But these fire waves were instantly chopped down by the Daoqi, which then rushed forward and directly collided into its huge fist. Yi Ziwen's blade attack was so fierce that it had actually cut out deep wounds on its body. Even the bones were visible, and the blood was constantly flowing out of these wounds. Roar! The Violent Ape King suddenly cried out in pain, and its eyes looked even more brutal. Numerous flames flared out from the gaping wounds on its body, and the scene resembled a volcanic eruption. The Violent Ape King had directly turned into a violent flaming ape. Flames burst out from the punch of Violent Ape King and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. But he calmly looked into the blood-red eyes of Violent Ape King, because he sensed that its movements had started to look very slow. Boom! Suddenly, something exploded inside Yi Shiwen's body, and he, who had not been able to have a breakthrough for a long time, finally had breakthrough. Tyrant's body technique suddenly started to revolve wildly inside his body. The strength of 99 tigers started to gather at one point inside his body and started to transform into an immense strength. His strength was no longer decentralized and had started to unite together. Boom! At this moment, Tyrant body technique finally broke through to the first layer of the Xiaoqing realm, and he finally acquired the strength of a dragon. Yi Shiwen heard a faint voice of a dragon within his body. He fiercely opened his eyes. An imposing aura spread out, and he threw a kick towards the Violent Ape King. Bang! Yi Shiwen once again kicked the Violent Ape King. However, this time, the terrifying strength of a dragon present in his kick directly blasted away the Violent Ape King, and it tumbled down to one side. However, he did not continue to chase after it to give the killing blow, because he sensed that the Zhen Qi inside his body had begun to stir up and was constantly revolving around. Yi Shiwen knew that he was about to have a breakthrough. Yi Shiwen constantly condensed the Zhen Qi inside his body. His body had already acquired a touch of Xiantian Zhen Qi, and at this moment, this early experience had played a guiding role in transforming countless amount of Houtian Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Zhen Qi. He didn't know how much time had already passed. It seemed like many years had passed, but also like only a few seconds had passed. After he had condensed the Zhen Qi, he felt that 10% of the Houtian Zhen Qi inside his body had fully transformed into Xiantian Zhen Qi. Boom! Yi Shiwen finally broke through to the Houtian 9th stage. After breaking through to the Houtian 9th stage, Yi Shiwen suddenly laughed out and once again looked towards the Violent Ape King with a glorious look in his eyes. His blade shined brightly, and Daoguang rushed towards the mighty Violent Ape King and chopped it into two halves. Chapter 56. Towards the Fingya Mountain. Yi Shiwen was unbearably delighted in his heart. And why wouldn't he be? He finally acquired the strength of a dragon, and 1/10 of his Zhen Qi had already converted into Xiantian Zhen Qi. He was confident that now he could easily compete with the Xiantian master. Yi Shiwen had found Luo Tian's notes in his storage ring and learned from it that Xiantian realm was also divided in 9 stages. And these stages depended on the amount of Zhen Qi already transformed into Xiantian Zhen Qi. If 10% of Zhen Qi had transformed into Xiantian Zhen Qi, then the expert would break into the Xiantian first stage. If 20% of Zhen Qi had transformed into Xiantian Zhen Qi, then the expert would reach the peak of Xiantian first stage. If 30% of Zhen Qi had transformed into Xiantian Zhen Qi, then the expert would break into the Xiantian second stage. In other words, now that he possessed the strength of a dragon, and had also successfully transformed 10% of his Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Zhen Qi, he could open up the world bridge of Xiantian realm, and then he would be able to compete with the Xiantian first stage master, though he would still lack the endurance of a Xiantian master. However, his strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. But this happiness was short-lived, because even if he could compete with the Xiantian master, but after all, he had not yet entered the Xiantian realm, and there was still a long way to go. Almost half a month had passed with only 10 days left. Within this time, he needed to continue to increase his score, although he had already gained a lot of points by killing those Zhang disciples. But he still felt that his score was not enough to win a Blood Yuan fruit. Now that his fighting power was comparable to that of a Xiantian master, it had become too simple for him to earn points. Because now, even the demon beasts of peak Hotian 9th stage were simply not his match. Days passed. Yi Xuan beheaded many demon beasts on the way to Fengye Mountain, and his score also increased rapidly. 5 days later, his total accumulated points had gone over 10,000 points, and during this period, he had also found a yellow token. He didn't have an experience of this kind of competition, and he didn't know if the score of 10,000 points was good enough or not. So, he had followed the rule of the more the better, and had continued to collect as much points as he could. However, the time to exit the Blood Yuan territory had almost arrived, and Yi Xuan rushed towards the central region of Fengye Mountain. There Blood Yuan fruit was about to mature, and at that time, Blood Yuan territory would open up, and the 4 elders would come inside to reward the fruits to the top scorers. There was no need to worry about someone picking up the Blood Yuan fruits in advance, because if it was picked by someone before it had fully matured, then it would lose all its miraculous properties and become a useless fruit. Everyone, including Xiantian demon beasts, knew about this fact and wouldn't touch it before it fully matured. Those Xiantian-level demon beasts possessed wisdom. In fact, it could be said that after entering into the Xiantian realm, demon beasts gained intelligence and wisdom. As these Xiantian-level demon beasts grew stronger, their wisdom also increased with their strengths. These wise demon beasts were called true demon beasts, and the Hotian realm demon beasts were nothing compared to them. Even formidable demon beasts could change their appearance into that of a human, and they belonged to the race named Yazu race. Near the forest of Fengye Mountain, a group of dozens of Yiyuan school disciples had gathered. The group was being led by both Yi Feng and Zhang Yang in the direction of central region of Fengye Mountain. According to the time informed by the elders, Blood Yuan fruit was about to mature, and then they would also be able to get out of the Blood Yuan territory. In a blink of an eye, a month had already passed, and it was enough to gather all of the Yiyuan disciples together, and at the same time, also hunt for the points. The sole purpose of this rule was to encourage the 2 sides to kill each other. After entering this dimension, all of the disciples had been scattered throughout the territory, and similar to Zhang family, Yiyuan school disciples had also searched for each other and gathered together, because staying alone and away from the main group could be life-threatening. In the beginning, both sides had a lot of casualties. Both sides had killed a lot of strayed disciples from the other side, until Zhang family and Yiyuan school disciples had gathered their own disciples and formed their respective groups. In addition to that, Xiantian demon beasts had almost disappeared from Blood Yuan territory. Every 10 years, both schools would send a large number of Xiantian masters into the Blood Yuan territory, and they had exterminated almost all of the Xiantian demon beasts, because these beasts required decades to reach the Xiantian realm. So, it could be said that the Blood Yuan territory didn't have any Xiantian demon beasts left, and even if there were some left, then they were only a few in numbers. And this was the reason why Yiyuan school had finally agreed to the idea of Zhang family to send their core disciples together inside the Blood Yuan territory. If there were Xiantian demon beasts running amok inside the territory, then they certainly wouldn't send their core disciples to their deaths. Also, Yi Feng had already entered half a step into the Xiantian realm, and his presence had helped in reducing the casualties to a minimum. However, a lot of core disciples had died, and the death count was at least over 15 disciples. All of they were the core disciples of Yiyuan school, and losing even one could be considered a great loss for the school, but losing 15 of them was definitely a severe loss for the Yiyuan school. Of course, Zhang family had also lost a lot of their core disciples. This competition is now coming to an end. Yi Feng said, "We will immediately go to Fengye Mountain and wait for 2 elders to arrive. Although, they might encounter the Zhang crowd on the way to Fengye Mountain, but they had no choice. The fight between the 2 sides was inevitable. Moreover, they needed to hurry and reach there before those Zhang disciples could, so as to stop them from getting their hands on the Blood Yuan fruit." Everyone's face had lighted up because they were finally getting out of here. In this month their strengths had greatly improved. There were more than a dozen who were initially at the peak of Hotian 8th stage, and had broken through to the Hotian 9th stage. For many disciples, the purpose of coming here had already been achieved, and they had also greatly honed their skills. But we need to be careful of those sneaky Zhang bastards. Yifeng continued. This month, I have always felt that something's wrong. Except for the first few days of skirmishes, it suddenly got so peaceful. This is not their style. You are right, but there are so many people in our group, and all of their plots will be totally useless against us. Zhang Yang said with a smile. Although, the fat elder had commented that this year's group of core disciples was a lineup of losers. But that was not the case. Zhang Yang was confident that there were enough people in their squad to take care of those Zhang disciples. And as far as those top disciples were concerned, if he and Yifeng joined forces, then they could easily take care of them. So Zhang Yang was not worried at all. Chapter 57. Zhang family's bastards die. There were a lot of giant blood-red trees on top of the Fengya mountain, and a bunch of 9 mouth-watering red fruits could be seen hanging from one of those trees, exuding a very seductive aroma, which was gradually spreading out in the surrounding area. These were the precious blood yuan fruits found in blood yuan territory. Under those blood yuan fruit trees, there was a huge pile of corpses of demon beasts, ranging from the Hotian 9th stage demon beasts to even half a step Xiantian demon beasts. Next to these corpses, 2 groups were confronting each other. The group of Yi Yuan school disciples was being led by Yifeng and Zhang Yang, while the Zhang's group was being led by the mysterious youth surnamed Lu. You people are really mean. You actually plan to have sole possession of all blood yuan fruits? Zhang Yang said coldly while staring at the Zhang disciples. Give up the idea because when our elders will arrive, you guys are really going to get it. Let's beat these bastards to death. All of the Yi Yuan school disciples were furious and started shouting. Yifeng narrowed his eyes but did not speak anything. He had led all of the Yi Yuan school disciples all the way up to here. And after arriving here, they had encountered a group assault from a flock of demon beasts. They had faced a lot of difficulty in beheading all of those demon beasts. And right after this, these Zhang disciples had appeared to take away all of the blood yuan fruits. This matter had gone totally out of hand. If you are not willing to give up, then die. Zhang Jingxi narrowed his eyes and said in a cold voice, You will kill all of us? Then we will find you and send a punitive expedition to punish all of you. A Yi Yuan school disciple got furious and said, Ha ha ha, punitive expedition to find us? For what reason? You Yi Yuan school disciples were all killed and eaten by the demon beasts, so why do we have to be responsible for your deaths? Zhang Guiqi laughed loudly and looked at the Yi Yuan school disciples, as if looking at dead people. The complexion of the Yi Yuan school disciples suddenly paled. Was it possible that these Zhang disciples had planned to kill them all and pretend that they had been massacred by the demon beasts? And if their Yi Yuan school could not produce strong evidence to prove what actually happened, since these disciples of Yi Yuan school are so stubborn, massacre them all. The cloaked youth surnamed Lu said. Zhang disciples did not hesitate to release bursts of murderous aura. Yifeng also jumped into the fight, but in just 1 month, the strength of these Zhang disciples had actually improved a lot. But Yifeng was relieved to see that 3 of the Zhang's 7 top disciples were not present. He could only see 4 of them, and being half a step into the Xiantian realm, he could easily handle 4 experts of peak Hotian 9th stage. However, he certainly did not know that the other 3 had already been beheaded by Yi Shiwen. However, Yifeng was getting a bad intuition about that mysterious cloaked youth. He was having a dangerous feeling, and this intuition of his had saved him many times in the past. The youth surnamed Lu suddenly rushed out, and Yifeng actually saw that each of his steps was creating a huge crack on the ground. A terrifying imposing aura unleashed from the body of that mysterious youth, and locked firmly on Yifeng. Xiantian, he is actually a Xiantian master. Yifeng was startled because being half a step into the Xiantian realm, he very well understood how much terrifying a Xiantian master could be. For martial artists, the Xiantian realm was like the first step. Hotian realm was like laying the foundation, and becoming a Xiantian master was like completing the first transformation. A terrifying imposing aura had spread throughout the area, and was completely suppressing the morale of the crowd like a mountain itself, and a normal human being would definitely faint under such pressure. This was the coercion of a Xiantian master, and those disciples could bear it only because they were considered elite among the elites and possessed firm minds. For ordinary disciples, only a look from a Xiantian master was enough to severely injure or kill them. Everybody run. Wait for the arrival of our two elders, then we will settle things with them. Yifeng shouted. He drew a long sword from his back, and stood in front of everyone to give them a chance to escape. Ha 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 ha. Do you think they can come in? The youth surnamed Lu suddenly laughed and said and looked at Yifeng and other Yuan disciples, as if watching a group of ants. This space has already been sealed from inside. Someone will come to your rescue? Stop dreaming, ha 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 ha. What? Yuan school disciples felt a shock in their hearts. The space had been sealed. It actually meant that Blood Yuan territory had been locked, and no one would be able to leave or come inside. They had been trapped inside to die. They go too far, everyone, let's fight with them. A Yuan school disciple roared. Yes, let's fight. We won't die like scapegoats. Overconfident, kill them all. Do not leave even a single one alive. The cloaked youth surnamed Lu said in a cold voice, however. His eyes were constantly staring above at the matured Blood Yuan fruits. His eyes were revealing a greedy look. That youth surnamed Lu suddenly drew out his long blade, and instantly chopped out a terrifying coercion accompanied with a dazzling daoguang, which rushed towards Yifeng. The surrounding aura instantly condensed into a row of daoqi, which clustered together into a roaring dragon, and instantly flew towards Yifeng. Yifeng struck his sword, and the jianqi erupted out of its tip, containing even more power than that of the peak Hotian 9th stage. Boom! A fierce collision occurred between the daoqi and jianqi in the air, and caused a terrifying blast, which sent out a layer after layer of strong air waves in all directions. The power of daoqi released by the youth surnamed Lu didn't diminish, and severely hit Yifeng's body. Poof! Yifeng spat a mouthful of blood, and his body was sent flying upside down. Overconfident, the youth surnamed Lu said with disdain. Brother! Yi Ruxia rushed out from the crowd, and ran up to the side of her brother Yifeng. Do it, kill all of them and leave no one alive. Zhang Jingxin cruelly said. Zhang disciples screamed loudly, and rushed towards the Yuan school disciples. Suddenly, a loud piercing sound came out of nowhere, and spread throughout the sky together with a huge daoqi, which chopped out instantly towards the group of Zhang disciples. Zhang family's bastards die! A loud voice thundered in the sky. Several Zhang disciples tried to escape, but couldn't and instantly got chopped down into pieces. Who is it? That youth surnamed Lu was the first to shout. It's me! A figure could be seen from far, getting closer. The eyes of everyone were filled with horror, because it was actually Yi Shiwen. It's actually you? How is this possible? You should not be, Zhang Jingxin said with an unbelievable look on his face. It's quite unexpected, right? Yi Shiwen sneered and said, Unfortunately, it didn't happen the way you had wished for, because I have already chopped down those several other Zhang losers you sent after me. How dare you? Zhang Jingxin said in a shocked tone, because they were not just one of the ordinary core disciples. They were one of the top 7 disciples of Zhang family, and out of those 7 top Zhang disciples, Yi Shiwen had already slaughtered 3. Zhang Jingxin immediately became furious. Chapter 58. Suppressing a Xiantian like the disciples of Yuan school, the disciples of Zhang family, after practicing to a certain extent, would also enter into the Tianfeng Hall. Zhang family was itself considered a high-level family in the Tianfeng Hall, and every year, a lot of Zhang disciples would enter into the Tianfeng Hall. Like any place, Tianfeng Hall also had a very intense competition among the sections. Large and small forces would always be competing with each other. Zhang Jingxin was this year's ringleader for Zhang family, and in the future, this group would also be led by him. Yi Shiwen had killed 3 important disciples from his future team, and by doing so, he had enraged Zhang Jingxin. With the sudden appearance of Yi Shiwen, the morale of Yuan school disciples had boosted up. Fuck these bastards! Kill! the morale of Yi Yuan school disciples had immediately mobilized. "You are courting death," the youth surnamed Lu said in a cold voice. "Attack!" The Zhang disciples immediately rushed towards the Yi Yuan school disciples. Boom! The two sides severely clashed against each other, like the two mighty currents in an ocean. The eyes of the disciples from both sides had become bloody red with killing intent. "Boy, you are courting death!" Zhang Jingxin roared, and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. That youth surnamed Lu looked towards the blood yuan fruits on the hilltop, and flew up to snatch them. But how could Yi Shiwen allow him to succeed? He instantly pursued after Lu, skimming up the hill. However, right at this moment, Zhang Jingxin's sword rushed over and stabbed towards Yi Shiwen. "Get the fuck out of my way!" Yi Shiwen shouted. The Daoguang horizontally chopped down a mighty daoqi, which swept away towards Zhang Jingxin. Bang! Zhang Jingxin's jianqi was simply not powerful enough to even put a scratch on Yi Zaiwen's body. And just like Yi Feng was helpless in front of the youth surnamed Lu, he was also in a similar situation, and was definitely not a match for Yi Shiwen, who had already condensed 1/10 of his Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi. The difference between the Xiantian and Houtian Jin Qi was more qualitative than quantitative. This meant that even a small amount of Xiantian Jin Qi was strong enough to beat a huge amount of Houtian Jin Qi. In addition to that, Yi Zaiwen's strength was much better compared to Zhang Jingxin's strength. So, when the long blade of Yi Shiwen chopped down, it directly deflected the sword of Zhang Jingxin, and sent him flying like a broken kite. Spitting a mouthful of blood, Yi Shiwen didn't even stop to look at Zhang Jingxin, and continued to pursue after that youth surnamed Lu. "How dare you stop me?" the youth surnamed Lu furiously said. "Shabu!" The youth surnamed Lu turned back in a flash, and chopped out his blade twice towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen instinctively used his long blade, causing the Jin Qi to burst out, and a daoqi horizontally chopped out towards the youth surnamed Lu. Boom! The two similarly tyrannical daoqi met in midair, and collided, which caused a terrifying blast. How is this possible? The youth surnamed Lu people saw the daoqi released by Yi Zaiwen's long blade, and suddenly said in a surprised tone, "Impossible! How can you possess Xiantian Jin Qi?" As a master of the Xiantian, he could easily sense the Xiantian Jin Qi, but he could clearly feel that Yi Shiwen was definitely not a Xiantian expert. But how could he possess such a huge amount of condensed Xiantian Jin Qi when he was still a Houtian realm expert? Impossible! Yi Shiwen sneered. With just an exchange of blows, he had already found out the ins and outs of this youth surnamed Lu. Undoubtedly, he was a Xiantian master, but he was still way weaker compared to Luo Tian. And most importantly, just from looking at his Jin Qi, Yi Shiwen had realized that Lu had just entered into the Xiantian realm, and had not even transformed 10% of his Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Jin Qi. This was the biggest advantage for Yi Shiwen. "You should worry about yourself first. You injured my brother, ordered an attack on the disciples of my Yi Yuan school. For doing all this, I will take everything back from you with interest." Yi Shiwen screamed and attacked again. Seeing that ridiculously powerful Lu had been completely pushed down by Yi Shiwen, suddenly, the morale of Yi Yuan school disciples reached its pinnacle. They didn't fear Zhang disciples, but they were scared of that powerful youth surnamed Lu, because even Yi Feng, the most powerful core disciple of Yi Yuan school, was not a match for this enemy, and had been easily defeated. This had made them feel insecure about their future. But now, although they did not know how Yi Shiwen would resist a Xiantian master, but he had already blocked an attack from Lu, which was good news for them at that time. The Yi Yuan school disciples understood that this was a battle of life and death, and there was no possibility of mutual compromise. They immediately rushed into the battlefield, and clashed against the Zhang disciples. The youth surnamed Lu suddenly flew off the ground to dodge an attack from Yi Shiwen. But Yi Zaiwen's blade skill had already reached the ultimate level, and the speed of his blade attack was so fast that it had instantly arrived in front of Lu. Lu was very depressed. He was a dignified Xiantian master, but he had actually been pressed down by a master of the Houtian realm. Yes, he had been completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen, because Yi Shiwen actually had the power of a dragon, which was not beneath the strength of Lu. and Yi Shiwen had already transformed 10% of his Zhen Qi into Xiantian Zhen Qi. That was also more compared to the extent of transformation achieved by that youth surnamed Lu. Lu was considered a genius in the Tianfeng Hall, but today, he was getting suppressed by a master of the Hotian realm. How could he accept this? He suddenly yelled out, "The flaming blade!" Suddenly, the Zhen Qi attached to his long blade instantly started to burn up, and from afar, it looked like a flaming blade. The flaming blade danced in the hands of the youth surnamed Lu. The burning air produced sizzling noise, and a terrifying heat wave rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The amount of heat present in this flaming blade's heat wave attack was astonishing. This astonishing heat wave instantly swept towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sneered again and again. He instantly chopped down his Daoqi in the sky, directly towards the incoming heat wave. The terrifying Daoqi suddenly broke out, and the incredible pressure present in his Daoqi instantly suppressed that astonishing heat wave. Boom! 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 The two terrifying Xiantian Zhen Qi fiercely collided and caused an intense explosion. During their confrontation, the youth surnamed Lu had been completely pressed down by Yi Shiwen. Yi Ziwen's blade chopped out non-stop, and instantly released 9 blade shadows which covered the sky in a curtain of countless blades, which completely enveloped the youth surnamed Lu. How could I, an invincible Xiantian master, be defeated by you? The youth surnamed Lu suddenly said in a frightened tone. He could not accept that he had actually been completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Boom! The youth surnamed Lu had no way left to escape, and could only wait for Yi Ziwen's blade to arrive. The terrifying strength of Missing Moon Beheader exploded, and had actually enlarged to a frightening extent. The youth surnamed Lu was like a prey in the lion's den, waiting to get mutilated. In spite of that, Yi Shiwen once again chopped out a brilliant Daomong towards the youth surnamed Lu. Chapter 59. Beheading a Xiantian. Yi Ziwen's blade had become even more terrifying when he had used the Xiantian Zhen Qi along with his blade skills. Lu had just entered into the Xiantian realm, but Yi Shiwen was not even a Xiantian expert. Then how could he use Xiantian Zhen Qi so easily? Lu was shocked, because compared to him, Yi Shiwen was more skilled at using the Xiantian Zhen Qi. But Yi Shiwen also knew that he was not a Xiantian expert like Lu, and his ability to recover the consumed Xiantian Zhen Qi was very slow compared to that of Lu. Even if he had converted 10% of his Zhen Qi into the Xiantian Zhen Qi, but once exhausted, it would take a lot of time to recover. So, he didn't have the luxury of having a protracted fight with Lu. But obviously, Lu knew that this was the only weakness of Yi Shiwen, so he made up his mind to drag on this fight, and keep on running until Yi Shiwen had fully exhausted his Xiantian Zhen Qi. Regarding those Zhang disciples, he simply didn't care whether they lived or died. To him, they were nothing more than sacrificing pawns. And as long as he could attain a blood yuan fruit, he wouldn't feel a thing even if they were to die. Yi Ziwen's long blade released a tyrannical Daoqi, and his Xiantian Zhen Qi filled the air. He was not planning to drag this battle for too long, and wanted to finish it as soon as possible. Yi Ziwen's long blade was tyrannically powerful. Just from a look, it could be seen that Yi Ziwen's understanding of the blade skills was far superior to that of Lu, although both of them had practiced their blade skills to the same level. Yi Ziwen's Daoqi was similar to a storm, and Liu's Daoqi was like a flickering candle in the wind, which could extinguish any moment. How can you be so strong? The youth surnamed Lu said, and he finally couldn't maintain the usual cold expression on his face, and his complexion had turned pale. The existence of a Hotian expert, who could actually have an upper hand while fighting a Xiantian master, was something incomprehensible to him. He had never heard of such an incredible expert before. Yi Shiwen didn't care why the other party was surprised, because he knew very well that he didn't have the luxury to waste any more time. He needed to quickly finish this battle. Die! Yi Shiwen chopped out an enlarged and extremely tyrannical new moon beheader once again, and 9 blade shadows fully enveloped the youth surnamed Lu. How is this possible? I am Lu Ji and I am considered as a genius. Like hell I would die in such a damned place. One day, I would enter into the Zhen Dao realm and become invincible. The youth surnamed Lu roared, and his flaming blade chopped out. Boom! The blade shadows clumped around Lu Ji, and his movements were severely constricted by the long blade of Yi Shiwen. Right then, Yi Zaiwen's eyes flashed because he realized that this was the opportunity he was looking for. Yi Shiwen had been waiting for an opening like this, and it had finally appeared. He was getting the upper hand, and his plan was to take advantage of Liu's constricted movements. His blade chopped out and several blade shadows obscured the sky where each of these blade shadows was false, but also real at the same time. He had practiced New Moon Beheader to the Deshang realm, and that had turned this attack into an extremely devastating one. This seemingly aimless and scattered blade attack had put Lu Ji in a very difficult situation. Dang! 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 A loud metal clashing sound spread everywhere, accompanied by an air explosion. The area surrounding the two of them had become a forbidden death zone, and none of the other disciples had dared to go closer. But they did not mind those two, because they themselves were busy and fighting with each other. Although their fighting level was way below compared to the big fight of Lu Ji and Yi Shiwen, but they still were the core disciples of Hotian 8th or 9th stage, and were fighting desperately in a life and death battle, where anyone could kill or get killed. Yi Zaiwen's tyrant body technique had also reached the first layer of the Xiaoqing realm. Not only had his strength successfully surpassed the strength of 99 tigers, his body had also become insanely tough, causing even his gestures to possess a terrifying strength. By practicing tyrant body technique, one could attain the overbearing strength of a tyrant, and even a single physical attack from the practitioner would be devastating for the enemy. By practicing it, one could become overbearingly invincible. His blade skill was already at the level of a sword overlord, and he also possessed tyrant body technique. Having blade skills of sword overlord and body strength of a tyrant complemented each other. Yi Zaiwen's body was tougher compared to that of Lu Ji. Even his blade skill had reached an ultimate level, and was better than Lu Ji's blade skill. This had put Lu Ji into an extremely difficult situation. Everyone was watching this fight, and was somewhat astonished. Yi Shiwen was so insanely strong that he had completely suppressed a Xiantian realm master, Lu Ji, to such a pathetic state. Lu Ji was extremely depressed. He never thought that a day like this would come in his life, where he would be pressed down by a Hotian realm expert. Missing Moon Beheader the first blade. Yi Shiwen finally played his trump, and his Daoqi directly rushed towards Lu Ji. Boom! Lu Ji's terrifying Xiantianjin Qi merged with his blade, which turned into a boundless Daoqi and swept across the blade. The second blade, with a lightning speed, Yi Shiwen chopped out the second blade. He constantly poured out his Xiantianjin Qi into his blade to form a terrible Daoqi, and it swept towards Lu Ji. Boom! Lu Ji's hand began to crack under the power of Missing Moon Beheader, because the power present in Yi Zaiwen's attack had increased to a terrifying level. Third blade. Yi Shiwen did not stop and chopped out yet another blade, as if to capture the heaven and earth. Bang! Lu Ji's blade instantly shattered under the terrifying force present in Yi Zaiwen's attack. How is this possible? This can't be happening to me. Lu Ji yelled in a frightened voice, and it seemed as if he had completely lost his mind out of fear. After seeing that Yi Shiwen had chopped out the fourth blade, Lu Ji suddenly shouted, "No, you cannot kill me. I am." However, he did not get enough time to finish what he was trying to say because Yi Zaiwen's long blade had already chopped out the fourth blade. And in a flash, Yi Zaiwen's terrifying Daoqi instantly split him in half, and his blood splattered everywhere. When Yi Shiwen suddenly chopped his blade, his body's Xiantianjin Qi had been completely depleted in this attack. Since his inner state had not broken through to the Xiantian realm, so he didn't possess endless Xiantianjin Qi like Lu Ji. The power of Missing Moon Beheader was significant, and blades were stacked together, and were chopped out one after another, causing the total power to reach a terrifying level. But the degree of consumption of Jin Qi would also rise proportionally. Initially, when Yi Shiwen was using his blade attacks on Lu Ji, then his Xiantianjin Qi consumption was not that much. But when he chopped out the fourth blade of Missing Moon Beheader, then all of the Xiantianjin Qi present in his body had been depleted. He could not even chop out the fifth blade. And in the worst-case scenario, If Lu Ji had survived the fourth blade attack, then he would have left with no other choice but to chop out the fifth blade. And this fifth blade attack would have contained only the Hotian Jin Qi, reducing the attack power significantly. You actually killed him, Zhang Jingxin said in a terrified voice. He was shocked and looked unbelievably at Yi Shiwen, because he had not expected that Yi Shiwen would actually dare to kill Lu Ji. Do you know who he is? I don't care who he is. Yi Shiwen sneered and said. He intended to obstruct this competition, so he got what he deserved. Chapter 60. The curtain drops. I don't care who he is. Yi Shiwen sneered. He intended to obstruct this competition, so he got what he deserved. You will die. You have dared to actually kill him, Zhang Jingxin said again and again. There is nothing to say, because he had it coming. At this time, Yifeng substantially restrained his injuries and said, that idiot actually dared to enter the Blood Yuan territory, and assumed he would be invincible here? Although Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan school was only a branch of Yiyuan sect, but underestimating it would be a mistake. Many years ago, Yiyuan school had been established on Qingfeng Mountain, and in these several years, it had sent many disciples to study in the main sect. Now, most of these disciples held very high positions, and this showed that Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan school had a lot of strong backings. And Zhang family's situation was also similar. Otherwise, how could a top-class treasure like Blood Yuan fruit, which could leave any Xiantian master drooling, be monopolized together by Yiyuan school and Zhang family? Kill them, kill all of these cheaters, Yifeng shouted loudly, which boosted the morale of Yiyuan disciples. And now that Lu Ji had been killed by Yi Shiwen, they were no longer worried. However, Zhang disciples had suddenly lost their morale. How dare you? Our Zhang family will not let you off, Zhang Jingxin roared. Won't let us off? Idiot! It was you Zhang people who conspired to seize all of the Blood Yuan fruits, and also brought this Xiantian master inside the Blood Yuan territory. You have brought this upon yourselves. Yifeng sneered and said. This time, Zhang family had crossed the line, and by bringing in a Xiantian master, they had also cheated in the competition. Their plan was to massacre the Yiyuan school disciples, and blame it on the demon beasts. Also they had attacked Yiyuan disciples after the competition had officially ended. The explanation for their actions? There was no need for that, because both sides had been hostile towards each other for a long time, and were sworn enemies. And the actions of Zhang family had totally agitated the hatred inside the hearts of Yiyuan school disciples. Not to mention, Yiyuan school disciples had a reason to attack, so they didn't need to explain their actions. Right, kill these bastards. Kill them, leave no one alive. The disciples of Yiyuan school roared in succession. They had almost walked into the jaws of death, and knew that if Yi Shiwen had not taken care of Lu Ji, then they most likely would have died at the hands of Zhang disciples. Kill these bastards and take revenge for our fellow brothers. Before, many of our Yiyuan disciples have died at the hands of these bastards, so it's time for payback. Zhang disciples disperse. Zhang Yuelian quickly shouted, Kill! 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 Zhang disciples had all been exterminated. No one thought that it would actually turn out like this. I did not expect it to become like this, Zhang Yang said with some emotion in his voice. Don't worry. This is a competition and casualties are inevitable. Moreover, this time they dared to cheat, and actually brought a Xiantian disciple inside. Yifeng said. But when Zhang family gets the information about this, they will probably not let us off. Zhang Yang said. Are you afraid of Zhang family? Don't underestimate our Yiyuan school. Yifeng said while smiling. However, from now on, I am afraid that the title of most powerful top disciple from the younger generation is no longer yours, and has been taken away by your younger brother. Zhang Yang said with a genuine smile on his face, and looked at Yifeng. Yifeng had been a renowned genius from a younger age, and even if he had been stuck at the peak of Hotian 8th stage for several years, no one could shake his position as the top genius. And once he had a breakthrough, he had already entered half a step into the Xiantian realm. Becoming a full-fledged Xiantian master was only a matter of time. Of course, that's my brother. Yifeng laughed and said as if he did not care. Soon. We will together enter into the main sect, and countless elites from the entire Great Yu state come to study there. We are going to meet many genius evildoers over there, ha ha ha. That is our stage. I have a feeling that when your brother enters into the main sect, he is going to turn the sky and the earth upside down. Zhang Yang said. He is such an evildoer. I heard that he was not this fierce during the inner disciples competition, although he was quite powerful, and had also won the championship. But I never thought that he would actually defeat a Xiantian master. Ha ha ha, well, he is my younger brother after all. Yi Feng laughed and seemed very happy. Yi Shiwen did not laugh like Yi Feng, and was thinking about something else. For him, this fight with Lu Ji was too meaningful, and was not an easy one like his fight with Luo Tian. When Yi Shiwen had killed Luo Tian before, he had already been severely injured by Hua Menghan, so it had become quite easy to behead him. However, the fight this time was different, and it could be counted as Yi Zaiwen's first true battle with the Xiantian master. Even if Lu Ji had only just entered into the Xiantian realm, but he was still a terrifying existence for Hotian realm masters. The Xiantian and Hotian realms were very different in nature, and the way of fighting was also different for the experts of these realms. Yi Shiwen had gained some insights from his battle with the Xiantian master, and he wanted to start practicing as soon as possible and completely digest the enlightenment he had attained. He believed that after complete digestion, he would be able to condense a total of 20% Xiantian Jinqi, and then, he would be capable of completely beating any master of the Xiantian first stage. By that time, Yi Shiwen would be considered to have set foot on path of the true martial way of spiritual practice. And even after entering into the main sect, he would have a high status and wouldn't become someone else's vassal. As for how to exit the Blood Yuan territory, Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry. Since Lu Ji had just entered into the Xiantian realm strength, it was impossible at his meager strength to seal this dimension for too long. He must have used some external means that won't last longer. Anyways, soon the two elders of Yiyuan school would find out about this abnormal situation, and would immediately open the Blood Yuan territory forcefully. Therefore, Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry, but Yiyuan school disciples didn't waste any time, and immediately rushed to pick off all of the Blood Yuan fruits from the Blood Yuan trees. After all, the most important thing, which had caused all of this bloodshed, was the Blood Yuan fruit, and they were prepared to face even the great Zhang family for the sake of these fruits. Sometime later in the distant sky, the space began to fluctuate like ripples on the water surface, accompanied with a loud rumbling sound, and in the sky, a huge door opened up and 4 figures jumped in. The first 2 elders to enter the Blood Yuan territory were the short and tall elders of the Zhang family. Even from far, Yi Shiwen could clearly see the prideful smile on their faces, but after seeing the scene inside the Blood Yuan territory, their complexion immediately turned gloomy. Chapter 61. Confrontation. The first 2 elders to enter the Blood Yuan territory were the short and tall elders of the Zhang family. Even from far, Yi Shiwen could clearly see the prideful smile on their faces, but after seeing the scene inside the Blood Yuan territory, their complexion immediately turned gloomy. How did this happen to the disciples of my Zhang family? The tall elder said while skimming down from the sky. At this time, his gaze fell on the Yiyuan school disciples, standing on the ground, and he quickly understood who might have caused all this. He suddenly got furious and shouted, "You little bastards, you actually massacred the people of my Zhang family." The aura of the tall elder instantly scattered out and spread into the sky. This terrifying imposing aura was firmly locked onto the Yiyuan school disciples. Well, the disciples of your Yiyuan school are simply insane. The short elder roared in an angry voice. "I will kill all of you and bury you all along with my people." The tall elder shouted, "Bastards, you 2 old animals, you won't dare to lay your hands on my Yiyuan school disciples." Another loud voice thundered. Both fat and thin elders released their terrifying auras, and a murderous look appeared on their faces. "You 2 old bastards are trying to cover for your Yiyuan school disciples?" The tall elder furiously said. "They massacred the disciples of our Zhang family, so I will kill them all and take revenge. The tall elder said bitterly. Take a hike. The thin elder shouted. Zhang Quan, Zhang Ping, you two bastards, don't you dare hurt my Yuan school disciples. The tall elder Zhang Quan shouted. I don't care, I want them dead. Get lost. The fat elder shouted loudly, and immediately rushed over to where Yi Shiwen and Yi Feng were standing and asked, what on earth happened here? The fat elder did not expect that things would become this troublesome, although casualties were inevitable in a fierce competition like this. But Zhang disciples had been completely wiped out, which had totally shocked him. The strength of this year's core disciples of Zhang family and Yi Yuan school was about the same, so the complete destruction of one party at the hands of other was almost impossible. These Zhang bastards actually. The disciples of Yi Yuan school quickly talked at once and explained what happened in detail. As the fat elder was listening, his face suddenly became livid. The other three elders also heard, and suddenly, their complexions also became strange. So, your Zhang family is the reason behind all of this. You deliberately let a Xiantian master come in. What were you trying to do? The thin elder snapped. They actually dared to send a Xiantian master inside the Blood Yuan territory, and also tried to ambush Yi Yuan school disciples, in order to seize all of the Blood Yuan fruits. Their crime is really unforgivable. The thin elder also had a lingering fear, because both elders Zhang Quan and Zhang Ping had become even more furious, and it would be difficult to stop them from hurting the disciples if they used their full strengths. You will regret it. Zhang Quan gritted his teeth and said, you will pay the price. What regret? This time, you should regret it because this matter is not over yet, and when the time comes, we will come for you and settle the score. The fat elder sneered. Suddenly, both elders Zhang Quan and Zhang Ping were aggrieved after learning about the heavy losses Zhang family had faced this time. This is your side of the story, because if we really had sneaked in a Xiantian master, then all of you should be dead by now. Zhang Ping quibbled. Let me see. Zhang Ping instantly spread out his hand, that was surrounded by the rapidly building Lingqi, which finally condensed into a giant hand, and instantly shot down towards Yi Shiwen. Zhang Ping's eyes flashed fiercely, and were filled with killing intent, staring at Yi Shiwen. How dare you? Both fat and thin elders yelled at once. The giant hand had instantly come in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen instantly took out the long blade from the scabbard on his back. His long blade shined brightly, and a white blade light spread into the sky. Then it took the form of a blade and chopped out towards Zhang Ping. Boom! A terrifying blade light and the great hand made up of Lingqi severely collided in the air, which filled the entire sky with starlight. Zhang Ping suddenly screamed while holding his hand. A big deep wound had been cut open on his hand, and his blood had started to pour out. That looked like a spring of blood. He had let his guard down for only an instant, but he had still been injured by Yi Ziwen's Daoqi. Immediately, with a sinister look on his face, his eyes stared firmly at Yi Shiwen. However, he could clearly feel that Yi Shiwen was just a master of the Hotian realm. But how did his attack actually injure a great master of Xiantian realm? His bladiki clearly contained Xiantian Jinqi. But how could a Hotian realm master possess Xiantian Jinqi? And his Xiantian Jinqi was also powerful enough to injure a senior Xiantian master. But Yi Shiwen clearly was only a warrior of the Hotian realm. Seeing that Yi Shiwen had taken advantage of Zhang Ping's carelessness and had actually inured him, the thin elder suddenly laughed and said, Zhang Ping, you old fool. You actually got injured by a junior from our Yi Yuan school. You are so pathetic. Zhang Ping bitterly looked at Yi Shiwen, but he knew not to attack again because both fat and thin elders had become cautious. He would probably have to face their thunder attacks if he tried to attack again, although all of the four elders had similar strengths. But Yi Shiwen was an anomaly because Zhang Ping had been unable to figure out the true depth of his strength. The presence of Yi Shiwen had shifted the balance of strength towards the Yi Yuan school's side. After this farce, the four elders didn't doubt anymore and accepted that Yi Shiwen had killed a Xiantian master, but were also quite shocked, because it was truly unbelievable. How could a Xiantian master die at the hands of Yi Shiwen, who was only a master of the Hotian realm? But Yi Shiwen had just showed his incredible prowess by catching off guard and injuring Zhang Ping. Not to mention, Zhang Ping was a superior Xiantian master compared to Lu Ji. At this time, Zhang Quan grinded his teeth and said, "Now we know that Yi Shiwen has killed Lu Ji, so we do not want anything else. As long as you hand over Yi Shiwen to us, we will not pursue this matter anymore." "Get lost," the fat elder sneered and said. "This time, your people were the first to violate the regulations, and you want to punish a disciple of my Yuan school? Don't be so delusional. Just wait till we inform your ancestor about all this. This time you have to hand over Yi Shiwen to us. Otherwise our Zhang family won't let you off, because Lu Ji was the disciple of our Tianfeng Palace Hall's great elder." Zhang Quan said, "Did not you hear what I just said? They had dared to conspire for blood yuan fruit. Humph, they really were courting death." The fat elder said. At this time, the space inside the blood yuan territory once again started to fluctuate. Chapter 62. Rewards. With a violent fluctuation in the space, a person walked out of the door from the sky. Everyone looked at this person, and actually saw that it was none other than the ancestor of Yuan school, Lin Zhantian. Lin Zhantian step by step came down from the sky and walked to the front of Zhang Ping, and Zhang Quan then said, "Go back and tell the master of your family that this matter has not ended yet. Later, I will personally give him a visit and sort this out." Lin Zhantian had easily sorted out this mess. He had clearly proclaimed that this matter was not over yet, and taking Yi Shiwen away was obviously impossible for the Zhang elders. The faces of Zhang Ping and Zhang Quan flushed with anger, but they didn't say anything because they were scared to anger Lin Zhantian. The cultivation level of Lin Zhantian was unfathomable, and no one could ascertain as to how much extent he had cultivated. After the unexpected emergence of Lin Zhantian, all of the Yuan school's disciples felt relieved. They felt completely safe in their hearts, because even if the two Zhang elders were to suddenly get mad and attack, nothing bad would happen to them in presence of Lin Zhantian. Everyone had extraordinary confidence in Lin Zhantian, and even Yi Shiwen was no exception. After Lin Zhantian had arrived, Yi Shiwen had finally relaxed his tightened body a bit. The reputation of Lin Zhantian, as the most powerful master of Qingfeng Mountain's Yuan school, had never wavered for many years. Several years ago, he had arrived here from the main sect, and at that time, the lord of Zhang family had challenged him to a duel, and had lost miserably. Although their duel had been kept secret from public, but people of Yuan school knew about it. After all, it was such an honorable feat, only the outer sect disciples did not know. But all of the disciples present here were core disciples, so naturally they knew about it. Lin Zhantian was known as the strongest ancestor to ever come in the history of Yuan school. In the end, no one knew how strong he actually was. Many years ago, he had arrived on the Qingfeng mountain and miserably defeated the master of Zhang family. But this had happened several years ago, and it was hard to make a guess about how much his cultivation would have progressed in these many years. Although, Yi Shiwen couldn't guess the depth of Lin Zhantian's true cultivation, but just now, when he saw him easily walking high up in the sky, Yi Shiwen realized that perhaps Lin's strength had already reached a terrifying level. Even the experts of Xiantian level couldn't easily achieve such a feat of walking high in the sky, and that too in such a relaxed manner. Actual flight was something that only the masters above the Xiantian level could achieve. Lin Zhantian didn't say anything else to Zhang Ping and Zhang Quan, and simply arrived to Yi Ziwen's side with a bit of a smile on his face and said, "Good. This time you have performed wonderfully and didn't lose your father's face." Then Lin Zhantian, with the crowd of disciples and two elders, went straight back to the Yuan school, and all of them returned to the main hall of Yuan school's ancestor. Lin Zhantian looked at the disciples of Yuan school and said, "I learned about the things that happened there in Blood Yuan territory, but your scores are still valid, and now, the winners will be selected based on these scores. The top 3 can each win a Blood Yuan fruit, and a Xiantian pellet as the rewards. The rest can also have the rewards prepared for you." Yi Shiwen was dumbstruck. He knew that the first 3 were going to receive a Blood Yuan fruit each. But, regarding Xiantian pellet, Lin Zhantian had just added it as the reward for the top scorers, and was definitely a compensation for the incidents that took place in Blood Yuan territory. But he already had a Xiantian pellet, so getting another was not too meaningful to him. Lin Zhantian had come up with 3 Xiantian pellets so easily, but Yi Shiwen did not feel strange about this matter. After all, he was the ancestor of Qingfeng Mountain Yuan School, and he also had the backing of main sect. There were a lot of masters of Xiantian level, or more studying at the main sect, so giving out 3 Xiantian pellets at once was not something impossible. Soon the scores had been calculated. Yi Shiwen had scored the highest score of 19,000 points. Yi Feng got the second best score of 6,500 points, and Zhang Yang got the third best score of 5,300 points. Yi Ruxia was ranked 12th, which was quite surprising for Yi Shiwen. Even if she had participated in this competition with a lot of Hotian 9th stage masters, she had still managed to get a good enough rank. However, according to Yi Ziwen's observation, it was only a matter of time before she would actually break through to the Hotian 9th stage. They were going to enter into the main sect after 3 months. These 3 months were enough for Yi Ruxia to break into the Hotian 9th stage, and even improve a lot. She was only 20 years old, and a year older than Yi Shiwen, but had already practiced to this extent, and this proved that her talent was not inferior to Yi Feng. Yi Ziwen's cultivation pace was very fast, because he was relying on special space. Without it, his talent was not at all comparable to his 2 older siblings. Yi Shiwen had already made up his mind that he would give the extra Xiantian pellet that he had to Yi Ruxia, because he did not need 2 Xiantian pellets. With the help of Xiantian pellet and her natural talent, the future progress of her cultivation would be incredibly fast. As the top scorer, Yi Shiwen was the first to receive the rewards: a Blood Yuan fruit, a Xiantian pellet, 50,000 low-grade spirit stones, and an opportunity to learn a Xiantian power technique, as well as a large number of medicinal pills. The rewards he had got were far more than what he had expected. Now, Yi Shiwen did not need to worry about shortage of spirit stones in the near future, and could easily practice for long intervals inside the special space. The most important thing was that the Blood Yuan fruit was something even the Xiantian masters were envious of. Only 9 fruits matured in a period of 100 years, and even Xiantian masters had to spend half of their lives waiting. The value of a Blood Yuan fruit was immense in the eyes of Xiantian masters, because as long as they were in the Xiantian realm, eating a Blood Yuan fruit would be able to immediately enhance their cultivation, regardless of which stage they were on. Although a Blood Yuan fruit was not of any use to the masters above the Xiantian realm, however, it was very beneficial to become the Jindao master of Xiantian realm. But then why had it not been taken away from the hands of Qingfeng Mountains, Yuan School, and Zhang family in all these years? Although Xiantian pellets weren't rare inside the Yuan School, but there was no doubt that it was very precious. A Xiantian pellet didn't have any side effects, and would not affect the future cultivation of the expert. This was the reason why this pellet was so well known. But unfortunately, it was only useful to promote an expert at the peak of Hotian 9th stage to the Xiantian realm. Chapter 63. But even so, it could be said that Xiantian pellet was a very precious treasure. But Yi Shiwen already had a Xiantian pellet, and now, he was in a possession of 2, which was redundant for him. Yi Shiwen and the other 2 winners had got free access to the secret books library, and could learn a Xiantian level power technique, which was a very precious opportunity for them. Needless to say, Xiantian level power techniques were very precious, and if he could learn a Xiantian power technique, then his fighting prowess could greatly improve. After the 3 winners had received their rewards, Lin Zhantian said, "The 3 of you come with me. We will go to the secret books library to choose Xiantian power techniques for all of you." Yi Shiwen and the other 2 followed Lin Zhantian, and arrived at the secret books library. The 3 followed him inside, all the way to the top floor of the library where, compared to the huge number of books on the lower floors, only 20 books were present. However, Yi Shiwen knew very well that these few books were far more precious compared to the books on the lower floors. The three of you are our Yiyuan School's most outstanding disciples of this year. Lin Zhantian said. You are the three top disciples of Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan School. But Qingfeng Mountain is located in the remote regions of Great Yu State. And you must know that countless geniuses gather to study at the main sect, where you are going to study in 3 months. All three were quietly listening to Lin Zhantian's explanation, and did not refute. Indeed, main sect was a place where even masters of the Hotian 9th stage could only become outer disciples, and those with their cultivation level lower than the Hotian 9th stage could only be regarded as Zai disciples. The criterion to enter into the main sect was very lenient. Main sect allowed entry to the masters of Hotian 7th stage or above, but no one would enter before they had already reached the Hotian 9th stage, because they were not stupid. Although the status of outer sect disciples was not high, but it was still better than that of the Zai disciples. And most importantly, the resources available at the sub-schools were nowhere near the vast resources available at the main sect. It was easier for the outer sect disciples of main sect to advance to the Xiantian realm. And this is the reason why, every year, the sub-schools would send their talented core disciples to practice in the main sect. For many years, the main sect had become a base for the talented disciples, sent by these sub-schools, to study and cultivate. Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan School was just one of the many Yiyuan sub-schools located at different places. A few months later, several geniuses from the Great Yu State would gather at one place and practice together. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but feel excited about this. According to the news I received, a lot of sub-schools are sending Xiantian masters to enter into the main sect. Lin Zhantian said, this time, they have trained some peerless geniuses, and main sect is going to get flooded with many geniuses. That is the reason why I had agreed to Zhang family's proposal to have the core disciples competition in the Blood Yuan territory, so that you all can have some life and death battle experiences and benefit from it. Xiantian Master. All three of them were shocked to hear that. Yi Feng and Zhang Yang were at the peak of Hotian 9th, and Yi Feng had also entered half a step into the Xiantian realm. So, they naturally knew more than anyone that how much difficult it actually was to break into the Xiantian realm. And even after entering half a step into the Xiantian realm, Yi Feng would still need to prepare, because there would be a lot of stronger people studying in the main sect. Although, after entering into the main sect, they would be able to quickly advance to the Xiantian realm. But thanks to the main sect before, or after entering into the Xiantian nature, or a great difference. Although Yi Shiwen was not at peak of Hotian 9th stage, but his fighting power could be compared with the Xiantian master, and after fighting and defeating one, he had finally understood what sort of power and presence a Xiantian master held in the world of martial arts. No wonder Lin Zhantian had given them such generous rewards. Right now, you three have the chance to enter into the Xiantian realm in a short span of time, and therefore I decided to give Xiantian pellets to all of you. In the next few months, when you must have to try your best and completely break through to the Xiantian realm. And at that time, these Xiantian pellets would help you to safely enter into the Xiantian realm. Lin Zhantian said without hiding anything. Competition was present everywhere. There was a competition between Zhang family and Yiyuan school, but it was just a competition between two sub-schools. Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan school was one of the patrons of main sect, and so it also had a lot of rival schools, and they also used to send disciples to study in main sect. The disciples of these rival schools would always have violent fights after entering into the main sect. Each of you can also choose a Xiantian level power technique, Lin Zhantian said, and it was clear that his plan all along was to help them in rapidly enhancing their strengths in a short time. Yes, three of them nodded together, and they also knew that after entering into the main sect, things won't be so peaceful over there. Good, I have told you everything. Now quickly go and choose a Xiantian power technique, Lin Zhantian said. The contest between several sub-schools actually included the contest among the top geniuses representing their sub-schools, and the overall strength of the current year's batch. Yi Shiwen and other two didn't wait, and began to choose a Xiantian powerful technique. Some of these techniques were powerful, and some were weak, but all of them were top-class Xiantian power techniques, and ranking them was very difficult. Thunder and Lightning Chain Spear. Floating Cotton Blade. Yi Shiwen looked at the Xiantian secret books one after another, but he couldn't find a suitable one for him. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen caught a glimpse of a bit older secret book, quietly lying in the corner. Coiling Dragon Palm. These three large characters printed on its cover came into the sight of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen then walked over to the corner and picked up that old secret book. He slowly opened its first page, but suddenly, a loud shout from Lin Zhantian entered his ears. "Don't open the book." But Yi Shiwen had already opened it. Boom! Yi Shiwen suddenly heard a loud roar of a gigantic dragon, and a scary thought instantly broke into his mind. Suddenly, a huge figure of a person appeared inside Yi Ziwen's mind. This figure was fuzzy and didn't seem real, but suddenly, the figure shot out its palm, and a gigantic blue dragon ascended into the sky. It looked up towards the sky and roared loudly, while its powerful claws fiercely grabbed the blue dome of heaven, which seemed to crack under its tremendous strength. Yi Shiwen simply felt that his entire mind would get ripped apart by this gigantic blue dragon, and his psyche would collapse. Each time the giant palm shot, it seemed to contain the divine providence itself, and brandished a gigantic dragon. By this time, a flock of gigantic dragons were soaring in the sky. Yi Shiwen felt as if his mind would collapse any time. Then suddenly within his mind, a burst of intermittent colorful lights appeared inside the mysterious space, and completely absorbed all of these scary thoughts. Yi Shiwen slowly opened his eyes while panting heavily, and covered in cold sweat. "Are you all right?" Lin Zhantian immediately arrived in front of Yi Shiwen, and asked in a worried tone. "It's nothing, I am all right," Yi Shiwen said with a burst of lingering fear. Chapter 64. Rapid Advancement in Cultivation. Yi Shiwen was sweating heavily after that scary thought had attacked his consciousness, and had almost destroyed his mind. This was quite a terrifying experience for him. "Are you all right, little brother?" Yi Feng asked in a worried voice, because he did not know what exactly had happened to Yi Shiwen. He just saw Lin Zhantian shouting, and suddenly rushing towards Yi Shiwen, who was drenched in sweat, and looked terrified at that moment. "It's nothing, I am all right," Yi Shiwen said in a calm voice. However, that vivid thought had firmly imprinted itself into his mind, and it had become impossible for him to forget it. "Blame me," Lin Zhantian said. "I did not warn you in time, but you cannot read this secret book of Coiling Dragon Palm." "Why?" Yi Shiwen asked. "A long time ago, our forefathers had brought back this Coiling Dragon Palm power technique from the ruins of a suspected ancient martial arts era," Lin Zhantian slowly explained. "Ancient martial arts era." All of the three disciples exclaimed at once. In ancient times there existed an extremely glorious martial arts civilization, and now, only a few bits and pieces of that era had remained. The once glorious era of martial arts had now just turned into a legend. Yes, this power technique comes from the ancient martial arts era, but after obtaining it from the ruins, no one could actually learn it, because this type of martial arts technique is inherited and learned through thoughts, and no one could withstand the immensity of that thought. Lin Zhantian explained, "It contains a mighty writing, and the method to learn this technique is hidden as a thought between the lines." Long ago, a lot of our ancestors had tried to inherit this martial arts technique, but in the end, the thought present inside this secret book had destroyed their souls and killed them. After a long time, no one paid attention to it anymore, and it finally fell into my hands. I brought it here, but due to a temporary oversight, I was distracted and forgot to warn you kids about it. Fortunately, all three of you are all right." Yi Shiwen had a burst of lingering fear, because just now, his soul might have been torn apart by that terrifying thought, and his mind would have completely collapsed. If this thought had not been sucked inside the mysterious space, then he would definitely have faced a mental breakdown and death by now. The thought was really too frightening, and no one knew who had created or passed down this incredible martial arts technique. But it contained just handwritten text. Then how could it actually contain such a terrifying thought? Hidden among the text, and even the passage of innumerable years couldn't erase it. From this, one could easily infer the incredible prowess of the creator of this book. You can't learn this martial arts technique. You absolutely cannot, so give it up. Lin Zhantian said. Yi Shiwen nodded and didn't argue with Lin Zhantian. But he also knew that the terrifying thought had been absorbed into the mysterious space. Later, if he wanted to take a look at it, he could do it any time. So he didn't need to argue over something that he had already acquired. Yi Shiwen kept the secret book of coiling dragon palm on the shelf, and chose another power technique, called restraining breath technique. Although a lot of power techniques, more or less mentioned about how to hide one's breath. However, this power technique specialized in the field. Not to mention, it was also a Xiantian level technique. Others were surprised because they couldn't understand why Yi Shiwen had not chosen an attack-type Xiantian power technique, but rather, he chose such a technique that would be useless for fighting. However, they did not know that Yi Shiwen had already learned many fighting-based Xiantian level power techniques. And if he was to choose one more, it would be equivalent to biting off more than he could chew. After each of the 3 winners had chosen a power technique, the core disciples competition had finally come to an end, and whole Yiyuan school had become noisy, talking about the recent incidents. The news of Zhang family sending a Xiantian master inside the Blood Yuan territory to massacre the Yiyuan school disciples and seize all of the Blood Yuan fruits had spread throughout the school, but no one would have thought that this Xiantian master had been killed instead, along with all of the other Zhang core disciples. Overnight, the news spread in the Yiyuan school like a forest fire, and the headline clearly referred to Yi Zaiwen's exploits, and how he had single-handedly beheaded a Xiantian disciple. Now, everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had actually beheaded a Xiantian disciple of Zhang family. In a short period of time, Yi Zaiwen's reputation had incredibly surpassed that of those established top disciples of previous years, and many disciples had started to recognize him as the strongest top core disciple. However, when there was uproar in the outside world, and everyone was talking about the exploits of Yi Shiwen, but he seemed to have vanished and no one could find him. After choosing a Xiantian power technique, Yi Shiwen didn't waste time and shut himself up to start the closed-door practice. He was going to the main sect after 3 months, so while he still had time, each second of it was valuable for practicing, because he needed to be strong enough to sustain himself among the geniuses, who were also going to enroll with Yi Shiwen. After entering into the main sect, the competition would be even more intense. In a blink of an eye, a month's time had already passed. In the backside of Qingfeng Mountain, the intermittent loud roars of a dragon could be heard echoing in the sky. Yi Shiwen had a calm expression on his face, and suddenly, his palm shot out, and a figure, with its hands clasped together, leaped inside the mountain forest using dragon tiger steps. Boom! With a loud sound, a large tree instantly collapsed by a forceful slap of Yi Zaiwen's palm using coiling dragon palm. Yi Shiwen stopped his movements, and calculated the time, and found out that he had been practicing over a month. In just a month, his strength had progressed by leaps and bounds. His cultivation had reached all the way to the peak of Hotian 9th stage, and was only 1 step away from entering into the Xiantian realm. He had also condensed 20% of his Zhenqi into Xiantian Zhenqi, and his strength had directly reached the strength of 3 dragons, which was even comparable to the strength of a Xiantian 2nd stage master. Now Yi Shiwen had become powerful enough to easily defeat a Xiantian expert like Lu Ji, in few moves only. Also during this month, Yi Shiwen had gained the most progress in his martial arts techniques, and for that, he had to burn a large number of spirit stones to advance his martial arts skills faster in a short span of time. The first was Missing Moon Beheader. After a month of crazy practicing, he had finally succeeded to reach the Deshang realm, and now, he could strike 9 consecutive blades one after the other, which was big feat, even for a Xiantian master. And chopping 9 consecutive blades was the dead end for Missing Moon Beheader. But with the strike of each additional blade, the total might of the attack would also increase significantly, and after 9 consecutive blade strikes, one could imagine the terrifying might present in the 9th blade. After a month of continuously burning the spirit stones, his celestial step technique had also reached the next level. Initially, this technique was incomplete and could only be regarded as an advanced technique. At that time, Yi Shiwen had practiced it to the Desheng realm, but later, inside the special space, he completely deduced the missing Xiantian realm parts of celestial step. Although, he had merely mastered the first glimpse of Xiantian realm parts. But now, his speed had increased by more than 50% of what it used to be. It could be said that his speed had increased to a terrifying level. While practicing tyrant body technique, he had finally reached the peak of Xiaoqing realm, and was only one step away from entering into the Desheng realm, and once he did, his physical strength would grow rapidly. Lastly, he had completely practiced restraining breath technique to its highest possible level. Chapter 65. Departure after completely mastering the restraining breath technique. Now, even if he stood next to a master of the peak Hotian 9th stage, his breath would not be discovered. And so long as he was careful enough, he had full confidence to pull a fast one on a Xiantian master. Yi Shiwen also discovered that the utility of restraining breath technique was far more than just restraining the breath. It could even change the breath of the practitioner completely into another person's breath, which was very rare. He had spent a lot of time on practicing coiling dragon palm, and had also burnt a large number of spirit stones, so that he could continue to stay inside the special space present in his mind. That scary thought had been absorbed by the special space, and now, he could practice coiling dragon palm, as and when he wished to do so, because inside that mysterious space, he did not need to be worried about that scary thought going berserk inside his mind. So long as he had time and enough spirit stones, Yi Shiwen could observe and emulate this coiling dragon palm technique, but it was too subtle, and his cultivation level was too low to be able to fully comprehend it. After a month of continuous burning of spirit stones, he had begun to comprehend only a section of that thought, and had learnt the first move of coiling dragon palm, named Hidden Dragon Rising from the Abyss. The power present in the move, Hidden Dragon Rising from the Abyss, was tremendous, but it came at a major cost, because once used, it would consume 10% of the Xiantianjin Qi instantly. This month, the strength of Yi Shiwen had progressed extremely fast, enough to surpass the rate of consumption of spirit stones. In just a month, to practice inside the special space, he had consumed more than 50,000 spirit stones, which was more than half of his total stock of spirit stones. Although, he had not yet entered into the Xiantian realm, but now, he was confident enough to beat any master of the Xiantian first stage, and he could even compete with the masters of Xiantian second stage, and could easily exchange blows with them. After continuously practicing for a month, Yi Shiwen did not continue to stay in the backside of Qingfeng Mountain, and returned to the Yiyuan school. What? You are going to walk alone to the main sect? At the Yi family's residence, the members of Yi family were sitting on a dinner table, and suddenly, Xia Chuanxue exclaimed. With a puzzled expression on his face, Yi Kongming looked at Yi Shiwen, because he couldn't understand why Yi Shiwen had planned to walk all the way to the main sect. Do you know how long it takes to walk from Qingfeng Mountain to main sect? Xia Chuanxue asked. At least more than 2 months if you walk at a moderate pace. I know, but my cultivation has reached a bottleneck, and I think that walking all the way to the main sect would turn out to be a good training for me. Yi Shiwen said. Generally, main sect would always send giant demon birds to serve as mounts for the disciples. These flying mounts were not uncommon in the main sect, especially for those Xiantian masters, who were unable to fly, and these demon birds acted as their mounts to fly in the sky. There were a variety of mounts available, such as, to fly in the sky, to run on the ground, and to swim in the water. These flying demon birds also served as a communication link between the Qingfeng Mountain and the main sect. Therefore, although they were going to enter into the main sect in just 3 months, but Yi Feng and other core disciples were not anxious, and were quietly waiting for the people from main sect to come and pick them up. Yi Kongming looked at Yi Shiwen, then turned his face towards Xiachuan Xue and said, "If he wants to go alone, then let him go. He will gain a lot of experience from this journey, and he will also get a chance to learn about the local customs, which will be quite beneficial for his future practice. But going by the road can be dangerous," Xiachuan Xue said in a worried voice. "Kids need to have their own adventures, because you can't expect a circus tiger to hunt in a wild forest. Wen'er is not a kid anymore, and we can't protect him for a lifetime." Yi Kongming said, "Well, but you have to be very careful on the way," Xiachuan Xue said. "And I will." Yi Shiwen nodded, and then he took out a porcelain vase from his bosom and said, "This is a Xiantian pellet. When the time comes, please give it to sister for me." At that time, both Yi Feng and Yi Ruxue were doing closed-door practice in order to have a breakthrough before heading for the main sect. "Isn't this Xiantian pellet yours? How can you give it your sister?" Xiachuan Xue immediately said, "What will you use?" "Rest assured, I have 2 Xiantian pellets," Yi Shiwen said, and he knew that it was very difficult for them to believe him, so he took out the other Xiantian pellet in front of them. "Then it's all right." Xiachuan Xue had to agree. Both Xiachuan Xue and Yi Kongming were considerate enough to not ask about the source of this second Xiantian pellet. At that time, they were both glad for Yi Ruxue, because now, with the help of a Xiantian pellet, she would be able to safely enter into the Xiantian realm. They were very happy, because all of their children loved as well as supported each other. The 3 siblings would support each other after entering into the main sect. Just knowing this much was enough for Yi Kongming and Xiachuan Xue, and they couldn't ask for anything more. They just wanted their children to lead happy and peaceful lives. When Xiachuan Xue accepted the Xiantian pellet for Yi Ruxue, a genuine smile appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. After coming to this world, he had lost all of his previous relationships. His loved ones had been left behind in the previous world, and now, everything related to his original world existed only in his memories. So the existence of Yi family worked as a mental support for him, and he was genuinely happy to be of some help to them. After coming to this world, Yi Shiwen had totally freaked out when he noticed that he possessed memories of 2 persons. In order to get rid of this confused mental state, he had decided to create a new identity for him in this new life and world. And he cared a lot for his family members and could do anything for their sake. Yi Ziwen's decision to walk alone all the way to the main sect had caused a huge buzz in the Yiyuan school, because he was not an ordinary disciple, but was a rare talent of Yiyuan school, because he had become the strongest top core disciple after killing a Xiantian master. He had become the ace of Qingfeng Mountain's Yiyuan school, and if he would walk alone to the main sect, then everyone feared that he might face an accident on the way. Moreover, Yiyuan school had many enemies, including Zhang family, and they could pose a threat to his life. However, the principal of this world was might is right. While executives did not quite agree to his decision, but Yi Shiwen didn't care about their stand, and had already decided that, next morning, after packing his things, he would leave Qingfeng Mountain and walk towards the main sect. Chapter 66. Blue flaming flower. The sun was setting in the western sky, and one could hear a burst of hoofs. The sunlight had drawn a long shadow of the person riding on a horse. On a horse, a teenager clad in black clothes was rapidly riding on the main road. While riding the horse on the main road, a small town appeared in Yi Ziwen's field of vision. Since leaving the Qingfeng Mountain, he had already traveled for 2 days on the main road. In the Qingfeng town, he had bought a fast horse for 500 low-grade spirit stones, and this was no ordinary horse, because it carried the blood of a demon beast in its body. There was a large distance between Qingfeng Mountain and Yiyuan School's main sect, and took about 2 months to cover this distance by road, and an ordinary horse would die before covering even 1/10 of this distance. For Yi Shiwen, a common horse was just not enough. He was a strong expert with Xiantian-level skills in his body. He could go without eating and sleeping for days. But that was not the case for common horses, however. This horse contained the blood of a demon beast in its body, increasing its endurance and making it 2 times faster at the same time. So now, Yi Shiwen did not need to spend all his time on the road, and could stop and practice as well whenever he wanted to do so. Yi Shiwen entered this small town, and asked around to find out that this town was called Kaojiaji, and Chao family had the biggest influence in this town, to such an extent that the entire town relied on the businesses owned by Chao family. Yi Shiwen also discovered that there were many warriors of varying strengths going in and out of the town. The weakest among them were at the Hotian 6th stage, and powerful warriors had already entered half a step into the Xiantian realm, and some were even the masters of Xiantian realm. He found an inn to settle down, and found a place for the horse as well. He wanted to have dinner, so he took a seat in the dining hall of the inn, and a waiter came forward to give him a warm welcome. "Sir, what can I do for you? First, give me a bowl of herbal tea, and a variety of side dishes along with it." Yi Shiwen placed the order. To hasten his journey, he didn't have time to eat, and won't always get proper time and place to relax and have dinner. "Right away," the waiter replied. "Waiter, wait for a second, I have something to ask you. Is something going on in the Kaojiaji town? I see a lot of warriors wandering around here." Yi Shiwen asked. "Sir, have you not enlisted yet?" the waiter said in a surprised voice. "Well, in the radius of 30 li, our Kaojiaji town is located on an underground magma pool, and recently, someone found the blue flaming flower in a dormant volcano. The news about it spread wide and far, and attracted many warriors. 2 days ago, the lord of our Chao family has also started to recruit brave warriors to send an expedition." Blue flaming flower. The brawny guy screamed in a loud voice when the chopstick pierced right through his palm with a terrifying force, and sent his body flying. That severely hit on the wall, and his hand got firmly nailed on the wall by that chopstick. The brawny guy was endlessly wailing while his hand was nailed on the wall. But from Yi Ziwen's demeanor, it seemed as if nothing had happened at all. He took out a new set of chopsticks from the box, and started eating once again. Yi Shiwen knew, at this time, there must be numerous people staring at him. These were the rebellious warriors and desperados. However, they had not entered into the Xiantian realm, so Yi Shiwen simply did not care about them. But this could be troublesome for him because the rumors about the blue flaming flower and the enlisting of warriors for subduing the monster had attracted a lot of strong masters to arrive at this small town, and Yi Shiwen did not want to have a high profile. Now that Yi Shiwen had effortlessly defeated that noisy burly guy in front of everyone, he could feel several gazes looking maliciously at him. "Ha ha ha, this young brother's got some fine skills." Chapter 67 Monster. Ha ha ha, this young brother's got some fine skills. The sound of footsteps came from the upstairs, and Yi Shiwen saw a youth wearing embroidered clothes coming down the stairs while laughing heartily. "I did not expect to actually be able to see such a skilled master here. It's so unexpected." The youth wearing embroidered clothes did not even look at that wailing brawny, who was still conscious, and had luckily not died. Yi Shiwen had a surprised look in his eyes. This youth had actually concealed his breath, but after practicing restraining breath technique, Yi Shiwen had become particularly sensitive, and immediately found out that this youth was actually a great master of the Xiantian realm. He walked up to the front of Yi Shiwen and introduced himself. "Hello, my name is Dai Xiaohua. Nice to meet you. What's your name, brother?" "Dai Xiaohua." Yi Shiwen twitched his eyebrows. A big man like him was actually called wearing small flowers. Well, he seemed like an ignorant person to Yi Shiwen, but he apparently did not feel anything about introducing himself as wearing small flowers, or maybe he had gotten used to it. "My name is Yi Shiwen," Yi Shiwen said, and he already knew that this youth was not malicious. After learning the restraining breath technique, Yi Ziwen's understanding of other person's breath had progressed by leaps and bounds. It not only could restrain and change the breath, but could also tell whether a person was hostile or not, based on his breath. One could easily disguise the facial expressions, but breath was the only thing that one could never disguise. Ha ha! After looking for so long, I finally found a decent master. Dai Xiaohua smiled and said, unlike these motley crew. Dai Xiaohua was obviously talking about the warriors sitting in the inn. But surprisingly, although these warriors had angry looks on their faces, but they suppressed their anger and did not say anything. This made Yi Shiwen somewhat curious about Dai Xiaohua. There was a huge difference of martial arts heritage between these warriors and Yi Shiwen. They were simply a group of outlaws, and their daily jobs involved struggles between life and death. This had turned them into hot-tempered and irritable people. But they still didn't say any word on Dai Xiaohua's sarcastic comment. Not of all these warriors were in the Hotian realm, and there were some very strong masters among them, including some who had surpassed the Hotian realm. As if Dai Xiaohua had seen through Yi Ziwen's curiosity, he laughed and said, it's nothing. These people do not acknowledge logic but strength. Since they cannot defeat me, they can only endure. This straightforward reply from Dai Xiaohua left a good and deep impression on Yi Shiwen, and this frank youth was far better than those other warriors. Brother Yi, are you going to enlist yourself as the brave warrior of Chao family? Dai Xiaohua asked. Yi Shiwen nodded. Haha, let's join together then. Dai Xiaohua laughed and said, well, let's go then. Yi Shiwen laughed and was somewhat curious about the background of this youth, because he was so young and was already a Xiantian master. So one could imagine the strength of a master who had taught such a genius. Come on, we go now. Dai Xiaohua said. So late? Yi Shiwen asked. It's not late, because every night, the monster comes to visit this small town. Chao family is anxious and wants to recruit strong masters to protect the town from this danger. Dai Xiaohua said. They did not sit there for too long, and immediately headed towards Chao family's manor. Since the entire town was run by Chao family, so the Chao family's manor was located at the center of Keojiaji town. Dai Xiaohua had come to a few days ago, and was familiar with the Keojiaji town. Although, the color of the sky was gradually getting dark, but Chao family's manor had a brightly lit appearance with countless torches lighting up the night sky. At this time, the door to Chao family's manor was still open and several gatekeepers were guarding the gate. When they saw the two of them coming together, a guard immediately approached and shouted, who are you? We brothers heard that your Chao family is recruiting warriors. We have especially come to enlist ourselves. Dai Xiaohua approached and said. Then, after a few minutes, two Chao family's executives came out to welcome them and said, this time, many people from our Chao family have been killed by the monster, and I hope that you can help us catch the monster. We Chao family will be highly obliged. These two men were the high-level executives from Chao family. To prevent any more casualties by the recurring attacks of the monster, they had recruited many warriors and had dispersed them in all directions inside the town to protect the people. According to my daily observations, the monster comes into the town almost every day. So tonight we should be able to see a good show. Dai Xiaohua said while lying down on a bench in the garden and holding a weed in the mouth, smiling in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sat cross-legged on a nearby bench and started practicing. He was practicing in the special space and could exit from that space anytime, so he was not worried. As time passed, night grew darker and surrounding sounds also disappeared gradually. People were holding their breath, waiting for the arrival of the monster. Dai Xiaohua did not stay there for long, and soon left to search for the whereabouts of that monster. Night grew deeper and slowly. The whole sky was obscured by the clouds, and became pitch black, but Chao family's mansion still remained as bright as the day. Then suddenly, Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and saw a giant hideous head in front of him. Fire sparks would come out from its breath along with a blow of heat wave. Clang! Almost instantaneously, Yi Shiwen took out his long blade from the scabbard on his back and chopped out a dazzling blade light towards the huge head. Dang! The blade light chopped on the giant head and unexpectedly produced a metal clashing sound. The sharp blade light drew a white mark on that giant head, but the monster was frightened from this sudden attack from Yi Shiwen and suddenly jumped back. Yi Shiwen finally got a look at this giant head. He actually saw a 10-feet-high beast with its 4 claws dug into the ground, covered with numerous red and black-colored dense scales, and suffused with a breathtaking coldness, with a slight tinct of fiery brightness. A terrifying aura firmly locked on Yi Shiwen, but he didn't wait and instantly chopped out a huge crescent bladiki towards that monster. At this time, the warriors present in the nearby locations finally discovered the monster and started to shout loudly to warn everyone. Monster, monster! Chapter 68 Firelin Beast Monster, Monster is here! Someone shouted crazily, and suddenly the whole Kyojiaji town shook with numerous warriors rushing out with torches in their hands. But this monster was ridiculously strong. Although Yi Zaiwen's blade attack was hasty, but it was still powerful enough to bisect a master of peak Hotian 9th stage. However, it still couldn't break the defense of the monster, and could only put a scratch on its scales. Yi Zaiwen's sudden attack had scared it, and it had jumped back and ran away, because the warriors from Chao family had also started to arrive at the scene. Many warriors started to pursue after that monster, but it was too fast and fled in a blink of an eye. However, during its escape, several warriors had been caught off guard and were torn apart by that monster. No one was able to stop this monster. You! Suddenly, a loud shout spread over and Dai Xiaohua's figure flew down from a nearby roof. 100 stages God Fist. Dai Xiaohua blasted a punch with a terrifying strength which instantly vibrated the air and rushed after the monster. Boom! The massive strength present in Dai Xiaohua's attack directly crashed into the monster's body. Bang! The scales on the body of the monster immediately shattered. Dai Xiaohua's attack undoubtedly showed a completely different strength, thanks to the condensed Jinqi of a Xiantian 2nd stage master. The monster was in a severe pain inflicted by this attack, and wanted to stop and wreak havoc on the perpetrators. But it knew that Dai Xiaohua was not someone it could easily take on. It immediately picked up speed, and taking advantage of the dark night sky, it immediately fled away. It looked as if a red and black flame was passing gently, but also swiftly across the sky. Dai Xiaohua chased after it, but after a while, it had started to slowly pull away and leave him behind. He was tyrannically powerful compared to this monster. Especially his fist technique was incredibly powerful, but that was not the case with his agility skill. Although he had practiced a very powerful agility technique, but it had showed its inferiority at this critical time. The so-called law of biting off more than one could chew. Dai Xiaohua had practiced a very powerful Xiantian-level fist technique to a profound realm, and he had spent most of his time on practicing 100 stages God Fist, and by spending less time on practicing his agility technique, his agility skill had become inferior. Also, the speed of this monster was at a terrifying level, and most people could only see red and black shadows flying at an insane speed. Dai Xiaohua bitterly stopped. Unfortunately, at that time, he was far away from the monster, otherwise he had the confidence of stopping it. At this time, all of a sudden, accompanied with a gust of wind and a sharp whistling sound, a blurred figure instantly crossed Dai Xiaohua and chased after the monster. Dai Xiaohua immediately recognized that this figure undoubtedly belonged to Yi Shiwen, whose stature was smoothly and elegantly traversing, while constantly flashing towards that monster. Dai Xiaohua could not help but be secretly surprised at Yi Zaiwen's amazing agility skill. Biting off more than one could chew was only a truth for other people, but this logic didn't apply on Yi Shiwen, because even geniuses needed several years to completely master a martial art. But what about Yi Shiwen? For Yi Shiwen, so long as there were enough spirit stones, he would be able to fully master any martial arts in a very short amount of time. This was the reason why both his blade and agility skills were exceptionally strong. After only a few minutes of pursuit, Yi Shiwen had already left Kyojiaji town behind, and while chasing after the monster, he had finally entered the mountain forest. "Don't run away like a coward, stay behind and fight with me," Yi Shiwen shouted, and his blade chopped out a bright blade light, which shone like a faint moonlight, and instantly illuminated the entire forest, while rushing towards the monster. Roar! The monster was anxious, and with a loud roar, its stature transversely shifted sideways with an incredible speed, and dodged Yi Zaiwen's daoqi. The monster turned around and stared fiercely at Yi Shiwen. Its two lantern-sized eyes flashed ominously and were firmly locked on Yi Shiwen. Then it lifted its face up towards the sky and roared loudly. An ominous aura started to overflow from its body and openly disseminate everywhere. Yi Shiwen noticed that it was actually a Xiantian-level demon beast, and he didn't know about its species. The monster opened its big mouth, blowing a foul smell on Yi Zaiwen's face, followed by a surge of blue flames coming out of its mouth that instantly burned through the air and soared towards Yi Shiwen to sear him. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen suddenly jumped up high in the sky, directly over the monster, and easily dodged those blue flames. Roar! The monster raised its head and opened up its big mouth to bite. You are courting death. Yi Zaiwen's long blade instantly chopped out a dazzling blade light that looked as if the stars were falling from the sky, and it severely cut into the body of that monster. Missing Moon Beheader. The strength of 3 dragons completely unleashed, and Yi Zaiwen's total strength surpassed the terrifying force of 10,000 jin, and instantly concentrated on a single point of attack. Bang! With a sound of metal clashing, Yi Zaiwen's blade attack, containing massive strength of 3 dragons, directly clashed into the monster's body and sent it rolling down on the ground, but it immediately stood up the very next instant. Yi Shiwen was flabbergasted because the defensive strength of its scales was unbelievably terrifying. Demon beasts generally held the advantage of possessing tough bodies compared to humans, but this extent of toughness was definitely rare. Yi Zaiwen's most powerful blade attack, endowed with the strength of 3 dragons, had actually just chipped a few pieces of the scales on its body. It could be said that this monster had the strongest defense among all of the demon beasts that Yi Shiwen had seen so far in his lifetime. It was such a terrifying demon beast that even attacks from a master of the Xiantian first stage couldn't break its defense. And this was the reason why Chao family could only leave this monster running amok. Yi Shiwen had also tried out its strength and confirmed that it had already reached the peak of Xiantian first stage, and even a master of peak Xiantian first stage was not its match, and would only die if tried to fight with it head-on. The strength of this monster was comparable to that of a master of Xiantian second stage. So, even an anomaly like Yi Shiwen, whose strength was equivalent to that of a master of Xiantian second stage, could only fight with it on equal terms. However, it was impossible for him to defeat it at his current strength. After taking an attack from Yi Zaiwen's blade, the monster suffered small injuries and was in pain. It had realized that dealing with Yi Shiwen would not be easy. The explosive strength in its limbs burst out, and it suddenly leaped up and dashed into the mountain forest at an insane speed. It had actually become even faster than before. Yi Shiwen couldn't reach its insane speed and could only give up. Yi Shiwen walked back along the same route. At this time, Kaojiaji town was already brightly lit, because the sudden attack of monster had alerted everyone, and people could be seen walking around inside the small town. Many people had gathered at the entrance of Chao family's manor, and a lot more had rushed there to see Yi Shiwen, and had already encircled him. Brother Yi, what happened? Did you catch up to that monster? Dai Xiaohua asked. No, it got away. Yi Shiwen did not want to reveal too many details of his fight with the monster. It's a pity because that was actually a fire lin beast. I did not expect to actually see a fire lin beast here. Dai Xiaohua said. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.